It's Christian fascists versus cartoon characters. Like that's the politics of America right now. Like on one end you have John Doyle's, and on the other end you have Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, just running around in circles, making noise and sounds, and then you know, on cue being like, "Don't forget to vote, by the way. Don't forget to vote, by the way." And then it's like, but and in the meantime, I understand your concerns, but don't worry. We have a song coming up. Do you like a song or a poem? A song and a poem, maybe. Ooh, if you're good, you get both. As protesters can be heard in the back chanting outside of SCOTUS, House Democrats sing "God Bless America."
Tonight with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America.
2022, I'm going to be talking about how access to safe abortion will now be restricted in certain states of the United States. There are many states in the U.S., I believe, that in 30 days' time will immediately restrict access to legal abortion. It's not going to stop abortion. Abortions will continue to happen, but it's access to safe abortions that will end in certain states. A conservative right-wing led Supreme Court has been dropping a lot of very scary decisions over the course of the past week to a variety of degrees, including public tax funds can go towards a religious school, even if the school does not agree with the curriculum that is set out by the state. Open carry laws cannot be enforced by states. We've got a ruling coming out on the EPA, I believe, on Monday, and now Roe v. Wade is going to be thrown out the door. I want to quickly say that if you do ! Safe access in the chat, there will be a link to Plan C, which is a pill that you can order over the internet and use it to safely perform an abortion at home.
Clean up your room
without having to consult with, well, I mean, you can't consult, I guess, with doctors anymore about this in certain states, so there's going to be that, but it's plancpills.org. There's also a link, hold on, let me open it up here. This is states that still need donations for abortion funds. 13 states that need your money now if you're donating to abortion funds: Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, and Missouri. Without the landmark precedent in place, the national abortion landscape will change quickly. First, there are 13 states that have trigger bans designed to take effect as soon as Roe is overturned and will ban abortion in about 30 days. The Supreme Court released a decision on Friday overturning Roe v. Wade, touching off a cascade of anti-abortion laws that will probably take effect in roughly half the country. Without the landmark precedent in place, the national abortion landscape will change quickly. First, 13 states with trigger bans designed to take effect as soon as Roe is overturned will ban abortion within 30 days. Several other states where recent anti-abortion legislation has been blocked by the courts are expected to act next, with lawmakers moving to activate their dormant legislation. A handful of states also have pre-Roe abortion bans that could be brought back to life. Elsewhere in the country, the post-Roe landscape is less certain. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is already seeking an abortion ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy. While the state legislators have adjourned for the year, some governors have expressed an interest in convening for a special session to pass additional anti-abortion legislation or remove anti-abortion laws already on the books. Abortion access in other states will depend on the midterm elections. Along the first wave, the anti-abortion laws slated to take effect, the trigger bans will work a little differently. Some will activate as soon as the designated state officials certify the court's decision, which could happen within minutes, while others will go into effect 30 days after the decision is announced. While all these laws make exceptions for the life of the mother, most do not include exceptions for rape and incest. In 5 states without trigger laws, Alabama, Georgia, Iowa, Ohio, and South Carolina, courts have blocked or struck down recent laws that banned most or all abortions. Without Roe, those laws will probably take effect within weeks or months. While Indiana has not passed a strict abortion ban, the Republican-led state could go into special session this summer to crack down on a procedure. Meanwhile, West Virginia, another Republican-led state, never repealed its pre-Roe abortion ban and recently added a constitutional amendment specifying that West Virginians do not have a right to abortion. In Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, Democratic governors have been a firewall against anti-abortion legislation proposed or passed by Republican-led legislatures. The future of abortion access will depend on the upcoming midterms. If anti-abortion Republicans win those governors' mansions, Republican lawmakers will have a clear path to banning abortion. Kansas is another state to watch closely. An important access point for patients traveling from anti-abortion states to the southeast, Kansas will hold a statewide referendum in August on a constitutional amendment that would eliminate abortion protection established by the state Supreme Court. In Virginia, just hours after the Supreme Court decision, Youngkin said that he had tasked 4 Virginia lawmakers, all anti-abortion Republicans, with authorizing legislation to ban abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. While Florida and Arizona have passed 15-week abortion bans, which allow 90% of abortions to continue, lawmakers in the Republican-led states might go further in the coming months or years. These are the states where abortion is likely to remain protected if you have the means and are looking to move. Many states have passed laws that explicitly protect the right to abortion, several adding those protections this year in anticipation of the Supreme Court's decision. Elsewhere, state courts have protected abortion access through state constitutions and past court decisions. New Mexico and New Hampshire lack those explicit protections, but the state legislators are not likely to ban the procedure. Based on current legislation, signals from lawmakers and interviews with experts, here's how we expect the court's decision to play out state by state. Alabama, likely to ban. Alaska, likely to remain legal. Arizona, uncertain. So, Alaska, likely to remain legal. Arizona, uncertain. Arkansas, ban within 30 days. California, likely to remain legal. Colorado, likely to remain legal. Connecticut, likely to remain legal. Delaware, likely to remain legal. District of Columbia, likely to remain legal. Florida, uncertain. Georgia, likely to ban. Hawaii, likely to remain legal. Idaho, ban within 30 days. Illinois, likely to remain legal. Indiana, likely to ban. Iowa, likely to ban. Kansas, uncertain. Kentucky, ban within 30 days. Louisiana, ban within 30 days. Maine, likely to remain legal. Maryland, likely to remain legal. Massachusetts, likely to remain legal. Michigan, uncertain. Minnesota, likely to remain legal. Mississippi, ban within 30 days. Missouri, ban within 30 days. Montana, uncertain. Nebraska, uncertain. Nevada, likely to remain legal. New Hampshire, likely to remain legal. New Jersey, likely to remain legal. New Mexico, likely to remain legal. New York, likely to remain legal. North Carolina, uncertain. North Dakota, ban within 30 days. Ohio, likely to ban. Oklahoma, ban immediate. Has a full ban already in effect. The state also has a trigger ban. Oregon, likely to remain legal. Pennsylvania, uncertain. Rhode Island, likely to remain legal. South Carolina, likely to ban. South Dakota, ban within 30 days. Tennessee, ban within 30 days. Texas, ban within 30 days. Utah, ban within 30 days. Vermont, likely to remain legal. Virginia, uncertain. Washington, likely to remain legal. West Virginia, likely to ban. Wisconsin, uncertain. And Wyoming, ban within 30 days. And obviously, yes, this is something in which I guess if you have the means and you want to, keep perhaps the future of your family safe, you might consider moving to another state or moving to Mexico, where there are states in Mexico that have legal abortion access, or trying to move to Canada, even though our immigration laws are more draconian in some ways than the United States. But ultimately, this is also a war on the poor, and part of a collective war on the poor, because, again, people with the means will still seek out abortions safely, either by traveling out of state to other states or by going to other countries where they can access safe abortion procedures. However, people without the means are most likely not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to move. This is disproportionately going to be affecting people of color as well. And nothing really to say beyond it's utterly and completely fucked. It's draconian. It's moving in the wrong direction. It is legislating against the autonomy of people's bodies. It is forcing them to give birth against their will. There's protests already starting in the U.S.
They don't care if people die. Pro-life is a lie. They don't care if people die. Pro-life is a lie. They don't care if people die. Pro-life is a lie. They don't care if people die. Pro-life is a lie. They don't care if people die. Pro-life is a lie. They don't care if people die.
And by the way, I'm just going to say this as a Canadian. I saw the disgusting, and shame on you, Canada, for doing this, Twitter hashtag again as a Canadian. That shit fucking always, like, the liberal fucking posturing that goes on in this country sometimes, where it's like, as a Canadian, I am so proud that I live in a country where I don't have to worry about such things. It's like, yeah, great. People are fucking scared as fuck down in the US because of this right now, and you're posturing about how great things are up here. It's decriminalized up here, by the way. I'll have you know. It's not every single Canadian also has access to this. There are communities that have abject poverty that do not have safe access to abortion, and specifically it disproportionately affects Indigenous people who live in this country. So yeah, before you get to that, you should actually be doing, instead of this whole, clutching of the pearls and talking about how great life is up here while other people suffer, talking about how, hey, maybe we should have some kind of a pipeline, a safe access pipeline. People who want to come to Canada to get abortions will have the right. We may even discuss paying for it, through through taxation or something. Start giving people the ability to come up here and get safe abortions if they need it. Maybe even apply as refugees if people are being persecuted in draconian U.S. states that will imprison them if they try to get an abortion, or imprison people if they try to drive someone to get an abortion, or sue them for tens of thousands of dollars, sue Uber drivers for thousands of dollars if they try to drive someone to get an abortion, shit like that. That's what you should be talking about. So, Joe Manchin, I trusted Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh when they testified under oath that they also believed Roe v. Wade was settled, a legal precedent, and I am alarmed they chose to reject the stability the ruling class has provided for 2 generations of Americans. Really, Joe Manchin? Manchin added that he would support legislation to codify the right to an abortion that is protected by Roe, but he doesn't support the procedural changes that would make such a bill viable in the Senate. As several Dems noted during the confirmation hearing, Trump said in 2016 he'd undo Roe. If we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's what I really want, and that's what will happen. This will happen automatically, in my opinion, because I'm putting pro-life justices on the court. By the way, there's going to be a lot of fucking finger pointing. There's going to be finger pointing at Susan Sarandon. How could Susan Sarandon let this happen? How could this happen? How could this happen? Why didn't Ruth Bader Ginsburg retire? Why didn't this? Why did Hillary not win the election? Why didn't you vote for Hillary? You Bernie supporters. It's all your just firing on all cylinders in all directions, which is fantastic because it really helps the situation at hand. By the way,
clean up your room.
So glad to live in a nation with gun care and health control. I thought this was great. As protesters can be heard in the back chanting outside of SCOTUS, House Democrats sing God Bless America.
Night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. The night with the light.
Here from Poland, welcome to the club of countries controlling women's bodies without popular support. Not that it fucking matters. An activist drafted piece of legislation was to legalize abortion here. Was struck down yesterday in the parliament by the conservative government. Fucking global far-right removal of bodily autonomy. But Nancy Pelosi knew exactly what to do.
I am personally overwhelmed by this decision. From time to time, I quote this poem by Ehud Manor. He's an Israeli poet. I met his wife when I've been in Israel. He says, I have no other country, even though my land is burning. Only a word in Hebrew penetrates my veins, my soul, with an aching body and with a hungry heart. Here is my home. I will not be silent for my...
A bold choice, Nancy. Basically trying to uphold apartheid, an apartheid regime, in a poem form, and using that to talk about the issue at hand concerning Americans.
Country has changed her face. The country has changed her face. I shall not give up on her. I shall remind her and sing into her ears until she opens her eyes.
Interesting. Bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off. Because, Nancy Pelosi, I think everyone should be reminded, supported Cuellar, who is a anti-choice candidate over Cisneros, and Cisneros lost, and we just found out in the recount, by about 300 votes. So, thanks for your posturing, Nancy. HB 1280, the Governor Greg Abbott signed last year, means that in 30 days after Roe's overturn, Texas bans abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. House Bill 1280 takes effect to the extent permitted on the 30th day after one of the following: the issuance of a U.S. Supreme Court judgment in a decision overruling wholly or partly Roe v. Wade, whereby allowing the states to prohibit abortion, the issuance of any other U.S. Supreme Court judgment in a decision that recognizes wholly or partly the authority of the state to prohibit abortion, or the adoption of an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that wholly or partly restores the state's authority to prohibit an abortion. I want everyone to remember, when you see protests getting tear gas tonight, that tear gas is an abortifacient. Cops are allowed to spray abortifacients on crowds if they want to, even in states where abortion is illegal. That's because what's being restricted is pregnant people having control over their own bodies. Wow, this is blowing up. Check out my abortion resource page, www.abortion.cafe. Put it on your signs if you want to. Put the www if you do want people to know it's a URL. Thread closed for new replies. I don't need to deal with the forced birthers, catty little gifts. I just want to be clear that you should plan for this as a way to get an abortion. There's no guarantee that getting tear gas won't induce a miscarriage, but it does happen. I do not recommend trying to tear gas as a way to get an abortion. Yeah, I think people in the worst of faith were maybe interpreting your initial tweet that way, but sure. We need to restore Roe as the law of the land, Biden said in the address. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, and equality, they're all on the ballot.
We must elect more senators and representatives who will codify women's right to choose into federal law once again. Elect more state leaders to protect this right at the local level. We need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. We need to elect officials who will do that. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, equality, they're all on the ballot. Until then, I will do all in my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. While the court's decision cast a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, many states in this country still recognize a woman's right to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, the Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state to the state that allows it. It does not prevent a doctor in that state from treating her. As the Attorney General has made clear, women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need.
Now, I understand why that's true, and yes, it is. This is
New Ziploc brand.
not now Ziploc. Read the room, Ziploc. I understand why this is true. I'm not going to say that this is all a lie, but it just feels remarkably tone deaf right now. Just trying to turn this and flip this all around to a voters issue, which, yes, it is a voters issue. This is something that is being led by Republicans, majority Republicans. This is something that Republican and Christian theocrats being assigned by Trump, put into the Supreme Court, decided. Does that mean that the Democrats, spineless as they are going to do anything? I mean, there are tools they have in their possession, but yeah, those same tools could in the future be used against them. If you expand the Supreme Court to 9 justices, then yeah, that could backfire when the pendulum swings in the U.S., as it seems to do on a regular basis. Could you abolish the filibuster? Well, yeah, but decorum. And also, has that ever happened? Well, yeah, actually, Republicans have fired the parliamentarian. George Bush fired the parliamentarian, actually, if you want to talk about history, and that was to pass some fucking taxes. So yes, it does happen. The Republicans do not care about decorum. I remember talks of decorum. Remember when it was like, oh, we need to, Obama had 9 months to appoint another Supreme Court, and then Mitch McConnell came out and was like, well, no, you can't do that. An election is coming up. That's just not the will of the American people. This will not stand, and we will prevent this, and we'll make a big fuss about it. And then Trump comes in, and it's like, how long do we have before the election? Oof, about a month? Okay, well, let's just, let's squeeze one more in there. Yeah, why don't we do that? Decorum. Yeah, decorum. We all play by the rules. Just keep singing about decorum while people's rights are stripped away. And by the way, it should be said, especially because Obama is coming out now and proudly saying that this is a travesty. Well, Obama said that he was going to codify Roe v. Wade, and Obama had a supermajority. So there's absolutely no excuse there. There's nothing. There's nothing you can say. There's not a single thing you can say except that you decided within your first couple months of your administration that you weren't going to make it a priority. Yeah, because this could never happen, right? Down the road. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, and I know, jokes at a time like this aren't really appropriate, but this one actually, rather than being a joke, really speaks to the heart of the issue. This was Mac at a anti-abortion rally with a whole bunch of Christians, and this was a Christian who was, a woman that he began seeing. He was going to the anti-abortion rallies for the purpose of meeting women.
I'm pregnant! What? I'm pregnant!
You gotta get an abortion!
Justice Kagan wrote this part. It literally rattles them off in a single paragraph, and it implies that they have nothing to do with each other, or with the right to terminate an early pregnancy. See Ant 31-32, asserting that recognizing a relationship amongst them as addressing aspects of personal autonomy would ineluctably license fundamental rights to illegal drug use and prostitution, but that is flat wrong. The court's precedents about bodily autonomy, sexual and familial relations, and procreation are all interwoven, all part of the fabric of our constitutional law, and because that is so, our lives, especially women's lives, where they are safeguard a right to self-determination. And eliminating that right, we need to say further, describing our precedents is not taking a neutral position, as Justice Kavanaugh tries to argue. And at 2-3, 5, 7, 11-12, concurring opinion, his idea is that neutrality lies in giving the abortion issue to the states, where some can go one way and some can go another. But he would say that the court is being scrupulously neutral if it allowed New York and California to ban all the guns they want. And at 3, if the court allowed some states to use unanimous juries and others not, if the court told the states, decide for yourselves whether you want to put restrictions on church attendance, we could go on, and in fact we will. Suppose Justice Kavanaugh were here to say, in line with the majority opinion, that the rights we just listed are more textually or historically grounded than the right to choose. What then of the right to contraception or same-sex marriage? Would it be too scrupulously neutral for the court to eliminate those rights too? The point of all these examples is that when it comes to rights, the court does not act neutrally when it leaves everything up to the states. Rather, the court acts neutrally when it protects the rights against all comers. And to apply that point to the case here, when the court decimates a right for women have held for 50 years, the court... The op is very similar to the leaked draft. It added a paragraph about how abortion involves potential life and it's so different. It already said this, but explicitly addressed dissent. Also, this is an interesting balance that is not textual or historical points. Finally, the dissent suggests that our decision calls into question Griswold, Eisenstadt, Lawrence, and Oberfell, but we stated unequivocally that noting the opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Super at 66. We've also explained why that is so rights regarding contraception and same-sex relationships are inherently different from the right to abortion because the latter, as we have stressed, uniquely involves what Roe v. Casey termed potential life. Roe 410 U.S. at 150. Therefore, a right to abortion cannot be justified by a purportedly analogy to the rights recognized in those cases or by the appeals to a broader right to autonomy. Super 32, it is hard to see how we could be clearer. Moreover, even putting aside that these cases are distinguishable, there is a further point that the dissents ignore. Each precedent is subject to its own stare decisis, sorry, I'm mispronouncing so much of these Latin words, analysis, and the factors in our doctrine instructs us to consider the reliance and workability and the difference for the cases of abortion with jurisprudence. Happy belated birthday to Justice Thomas from Justice Alina Kagan. The first problem with the majority's account comes from Justice Thomas' concurrence, which makes it clear that he's not with the program, and saying that nothing in today's opinion casts doubt on non-abortion precedents. Justice Thomas explains he means only that they are not at issue. On the majority's promise that other rights aren't at issue. Nor does it help to make the majority, at its word, assume the majority is sincere in saying for whatever reason that will go so far and no further. Scout's honor. Still, the further significance of today's opinion will be decided in the future, and law often has a way of evolving. The majority has overruled Roe v. Casey for one and only one reason, because it has always despised them, and now it has the votes to discard them. The majority thereby substitutes a rule by judges for the rule of law. Whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, one result of today's decision is certain: the curtailment of women's rights and the status of free and equal citizens. Power, and not the reason, is the new currency of this court's decision-making. In the end, the justices who wrote those words, O'Connor, Kennedy, and Souter, were judges of wisdom. They would not have won any contest for this kind of ideological purity some court watchers want justices to deliver. But if there were awards for justices who left this court better than they found it, and for those reasons left this country better and the rule of law stronger, sign those justices up. They knew that the legitimacy of the court is earned over time. They also would have recognized that it can be destroyed much more quickly. They worked hard to avert the outcomes in Casey. The American public, they thought, should never conclude that its constitutional protection hung by a thread, that a new majority adhering to a doctrinal school could dint by the numbers and expunge their rights. It is hard, no, it is impossible to conclude that anything else has happened here. one of us once said that it is not often the law that so few have quickly changed so much. As Breyer breaking the promise of Brown, the resegregation of American schools for all of us in our time, this court has never been more true than it is today. And overruling Roe v. Casey, this court betrays its guiding principles. With sorrow for this court, but more for many millions of American women who have today lost the fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent.
protect abortion providers and patients from civil suits in other states. California Assembly member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan said the legislation is aimed at making California a, quote, legal sanctuary for reproductive choice. The vote comes as the nation prepares for the U.S. Supreme Court to issue a ruling in which it's expected to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Because we got to strap in. This is a generational fight. This is not instant gratification. But you know what? A lot of these institutions were built on a very creaky foundation. And so what that means is that when we build it back, we need to build it back stronger than what it was before. Right now, elections are not enough. You know,
Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to be here and tell you to drop out. We can show up everywhere. We need sand in every damn year. We need sand in every damn year. But elections alone are not going to save us. We need to show up not at the ballot box, but that's the bare minimum. Into the streets! 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 Into the streets!
Clean up your room.
Neat timing. Thank you, Latvian Jesus. I appreciate that.
Now that the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in, the Republican legislature and governor there will be able to take action. And then in the Deep South, you see the 3 states that are near where they have the trigger bans, Brian Kemp, Kay Ivey, and Henry McMaster, all planning to move pretty swiftly. And then there's the there's a bunch of states that are blue states where there are Democratic governors and Democratic legislatures in Northeast and New England, including Maryland, here in the D.C. area, D.C. proper. And then the states on the West Coast and Colorado and New Mexico, they're likely to, frankly, strengthen their protections for abortion and become more protective to try to be welcoming of women who are seeking abortions from other states. But what we're going to be paying the most attention to in the next few months are the largely purple states where the future of abortion really is up for grabs, where the midterm elections in 5 months are going to be critical to figuring out the future of abortion rights. Kansas is a really interesting state to watch. They actually have a measure on the ballot, a special referendum coming up in August, just the month after next, about whether the state will protect abortion rights or not. And it's going to be particularly interesting because all these neighboring states, with the exception of Colorado and New Mexico, but to the south, those states are all going to ban abortion. And so Kansas could become a sort of a haven where women come from around the region unless voters kind of codify some protections. Similarly, the governor in next door Nebraska is also talking about trying to do something. But when there was a vote on a trigger law in Nebraska, it actually narrowly failed, in part because of some opposition from conservative Republicans. Montana, similar story. The Republican governor and Republican legislature very much want to ban abortion, but there is a measure in the state constitution, not federal law or federal protections, that allows for some abortion protections, and so they're going to have to basically change their state constitution. The other really interesting 2 states to watch in the short term are North Carolina, where there's a Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, and a Republican state legislature. The Republican state legislature is very eager to ban abortion, and the governor right now can veto it. But in November, the Republicans are very close to getting a supermajority so that they could override Roy Cooper's veto and essentially ban abortion. So that is going to be a fascinating state to watch. And then here in Virginia, just to our south, I was actually meeting with Glenn Youngkin this morning. He was speaking to some reporters and editors at the Post in the 10 a.m. hour when the Supreme Court announced that Roe was overturned. Glenn Youngkin told us that he is going to try to ban abortion in the Commonwealth after 15 weeks. Now, that's going to be hard for him to do because while Republicans control the state House, Democrats control the state
sick of
Senate
mainstream
by
media treating human
one
rights like a
vote,
sport.
two
Yeah, no
votes,
shit.
really. And so,
Like, I don't even know what the
there's
excuse
gonna
would be. It's like, oh, well, you have to have the decorum, obviously. I mean, you're a professional newscaster. You can't show any kind of emotion or biases as people's rights are being stripped away.
A big battle when the legislature comes back into session in January. Youngkin said that he's going to try to compromise and would think that potentially a 20-week ban might be more palatable, but that's still pretty dramatic in a state like Virginia that had been seen as trending blue. So, these fights are going to be ongoing. The midterms have governor's races in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. 3 Democratic-held governorships. All 3 states where Republicans control the legislature will try to ban abortion. Abortion is going to become a top issue in all 3 of these gubernatorial races, which are also, of course, presidential battlegrounds in 2024. So, to the extent that the Supreme Court has made this dramatic decision, as I said a few minutes ago, this is just the beginning of new battles in the abortion wars. This is not going to end the fight over abortion by any means.
Thanks so much, James. I want to talk more.
The abortion wars. I want to hear what Sam had to say.
That a fetus could be viable outside the womb. That was 4 weeks. They were looking at a case, Dobbs, that dealt with, I think it was a 15-week abortion ban. It really was largely irrelevant. They superseded Casey. In other words, it wasn't just a matter of, well, we've changed our mind. It's not 24 weeks. It's 15 weeks now. No, they went even further and said that there is no right in this country, despite the fact that we have had that right for 49 years in this country, to an abortion. That there is no right to choose one. Therefore, a state can regulate it in any way they find fit. And in 13 states, as of this morning, abortions are banned. In 13 more states, and they had trigger laws waiting for a decision like this one. That's those states: Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. They have different trigger laws, as it were. Kentucky, anyone who provides or attempts to provide an abortion will be charged with a 4-class D felony. Each one has, some nuance to it. There may be
Gannett staff received 2 emails in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned. The first one on the impact of employee health insurance. The second emphasizing social media guidelines, aka ruling news. Team Gannett, given the news regarding the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, I want to acknowledge the significant impact this decision has on our families and communities. Gannett's value and our dedication to inclusivity ensure that we respect all views related to reproductive rights. We are actively working with our providers to ensure we support continued benefits under new regulations and will provide information related to any changes to our healthcare plan as soon as specific updates are available. If you need more assistance, there's some numbers you can call. A reminder to all journalists employed by Gannett and USA Today Network to adhere to our current social media policy and ethical guidelines. All journalists must be mindful of what they post on social media and what they say in public forums. With an ever-increasing spotlight on our work, readers turn to us for unbiased coverage. We must protect that trust. Here's a few guidelines. You cannot use social media to take a political position, criticize or attack a candidate, or express personal feelings about an outcome or ruling. If you notice a newsroom colleague posting inappropriate comments, immediately alert your supervisor. Refrain from likes or retweets that could appear to indicate support for any side or group. As journalists, we make sacrifices for our profession. We must be independent, remain free of outside interests, investment, business, or political relationships that may compromise our ability to report the news.
Some exceptions in some of these states, but let's be clear about the exceptions too. And like I say, there's going to be 13 more states where these abortion bans will go into effect. Let's be clear on arguing whether a woman's life is in jeopardy, or there's incest, or there's rape, and maybe there's certain exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. Do not fool yourself. A doctor does not, when a woman's life is in danger by carrying a pregnancy to term, there's no light bulb that lights up. You can't look and say, oh, we can tell because their nose is turning red. Or here's a test. We have the results of the test. Positive, negative. Is the life in danger? Yes or no? No, it doesn't work that way. These are assessments that are made by doctors. And they are subjective assessments, like every assessment a doctor makes. And in that moment, when the doctor must make that assessment, that doctor is going to weigh two things. One, their subjective assessment, and two, prison time, fines, years of legal proceedings, loss of license. Every time they're faced with that decision. When a woman comes in because she's had a miscarriage and the embryo or the fetus has not flushed from their system, and there's potential that this woman could die of an infection if it is not out of their body. And the doctor weighs my subjective assessment of this, my completely objective assessment as to what I could be charged with. Will they find me guilty? I don't know. It's a function of my lawyer. Will I be ostracized? Will I lose my license? Will I lose my ability to practice at this hospital? These exceptions are not exceptions. Because the ban in and of itself serves to completely inhibit the ability, the will of abortion providers, and not just abortion, women's health providers, from doing their jobs because they don't want to go to jail. And you know, in all of these states, there are aggressive prosecutors who are like, this is the way that I'm going to make my name. So make no mistake about it. We have 26 states in this country, I would say by the end of this year, probably sooner, probably by the end of summer, where you will not be able to get an abortion. And if they do not have a medical abortion, importing of medical abortion medications, they will have one of those laws as well. And that's where we're at today. If Donald Trump becomes president in 2024, or I should say 2025, or Ron DeSantis for that matter, and there's a Republican Senate and House, I would be willing to bet you anything by 2026, we have a federal ban on abortion. That's where we are today. And there are still 8 more decisions extant by the Supreme Court. And we're going to have, I mean, this is just going to keep coming. Got the West Virginia EPA. We've got the praying coach, although we saw basically we know what that's going to end up being. We saw the ruling the other day on the separation of church and state in the context of public and parochial schools. I mean, this is how Junes are going to go for the next 5 or 10, 15 years, 20 years. We're just going to see more and more individual rights get rolled back. We're going to see more and more ability for the government to function rolled back. We're going to see the separation between church and state rolled back. I mean, it just goes on and on. Gun laws. In a moment, we're going to talk to Jamel Bowie about this. There were other things I wanted to talk to him about. We'll probably get to those as well. But this obviously is the big news of the day. A couple of words from our sponsors. I don't know that I've
It's an awkward time for a couple of words from our sponsors. And now I'm just going to segue into some commercials to talk about this kind of shit. You got to do what you got to do, though, Sam. I understand. So I think this is a rough outline of some of the worst places to be, I guess, in the United States for the current time being. You know what's fucked about what he was saying, or what like a lot of people have been saying about this, is this whole idea of, you know, it really feels like the right has not been secretive about any of this. They've been, you know, very forthcoming about their desire to restrict bodily autonomy based on their perverse and bizarre interpretation of Christian texts written thousands of years ago. And it's this really fucked up moment in history. And Sam's right in that, like, every single June you're going to see, as long as the Supreme Court is dominated by right-wing Christian theological Puritans, a whole bunch of decisions being cast down that affect every single American's lives in one way or another, and on a regular, repeated basis. It's just consistently going to be something that the overwhelming majority of the population doesn't seem to be in line with, doesn't seem to want to move in that direction, and yet they are able to govern. It's this really fucked up thing, because I know a lot of people throw the word like fascism around and fascists, but I think people need to also recognize historically things like fascist movements. They weren't the majority of the population. They weren't the majority of people at the start of those movements. They were usually a minority of very far right individuals, usually racist individuals as well, who all of a sudden are tolerated for a long time. And that's one of the big fucked up things about all this, is tolerating this shit, or just letting it pass by, or just doing a simple like, hey, just vote. You know, this is going to be a midterms issue. If you just vote, we can get rid of this. But in the meantime, we should be tolerating this fucking far right Christian fascism, because they're being very clear about their goals and ambitions, whether it is legislating trans people out of existence, controlling people's bodily autonomy, reverting us into the fucking medieval Stone Age in terms of people's reproductive rights, or even just the rights of people in general. This shit is absolutely fucked. You know what, like, fucking infuriates me about all this is that it's this argument that, yes, we care deeply about the sanctity of life, that this is so important to us. At the same time, every single measure that you could be doing to reducing the amount of abortions that take place, you also want to restrict. You also want to ban birth control. You also don't want to do sexual education. You want to promote things like abstinence only, which has shown itself not to work. And so you're doing this double fucking whammy where, I mean, it really, really fucking sucks, because women are caught in the middle of all this. And it's like, on the one end, yeah, you can't have access to the things that may prevent pregnancies, like contraception, because that is sin. And we're not going to do sexual education because that could promote promiscuity for some reason, even though all the stats and data on this shows that it has the opposite effect. It reduces the amount of teen pregnancies that you're going to have. And on the other end, especially if you live in fucking America, hey, we're not only going to restrict your ability to have an abortion under very select cases, and even then, the most grisly shit comes out of their mouth. It's stuff like, hey, we might make exceptions for rape or incest. It's like, you might make exceptions if someone is fucking raped against their will, where they had absolutely no say in the matter, and then they have absolutely no say after the fact what happens to them. They have to sit there for 9 months while the memory of that rape grows inside their fucking bodies. That is grisly. Why is that the way that it has to be phrased? Like, I can't get over this. And just time and time again, the whole thing comes down to like, hey, ultimately, this is to protect the sanctity of life. Once the kid is born, we don't give a fuck. Once they're outside of the womb, well, yeah, you're on your own. We're not going to provide any kind of measures to help you, especially if you're disproportionately unable to afford access to things like healthcare, education, any of that. Fuck all that noise. We don't care about the living. We care about the pre-birth. The pre-birth is the only thing we're going to legislate for. And then afterwards, fuck you. And also, if you're in America, hey, if you have to have a birth, it's going to be fucking very expensive. That shit might bankrupt you. You don't have the money it takes to go to a hospital and have a safe birth. And on top of that, stats show that you're not actually even going to stop abortions. All you're doing is removing access to safe abortions. That's it. People are still going to seek it. They're just going to be more dangerous in the future. They're just going to go out there and potentially have to risk their lives to be able to have autonomy over their own bodies. Not even mentioning the fact that a lot of people who are pregnant end up having miscarriages. Are miscarriages suddenly going to be considered part of this discussion? Are miscarriages suddenly going to be considered, what, is that God's abortion? Is that a part of it? Or are those people committing a criminal act? Did a woman do everything in her right to be able to protect that kid from being miscarried? Well, why don't we look into it? Why don't we track what she'd been doing? Why don't we track what the apps that she's been using have been saying? Has she been eating properly? I mean, we have to investigate that as well, because maybe that played into the entire thing. I don't know. By the way, delete those apps. If you have apps that like track menstrual cycles or anything like that, delete that shit. It's not safe anymore. This is the world we live in now. This is the fucking 2022. We have the technology to do amazing, incredible things. We have the sum total of human knowledge in our fucking pockets 24/7, and at the same time, if you use an app and they want to sell your data to a third party, hell, maybe that could result in some kind of, I don't know, criminal investigation into you for not doing everything in your power to maintain the birth that we're forcing you to have. You don't want to give people health care. You don't want to give people Medicare for all. You don't want to give them the fact that if they have to have an abortion or any kind of prenatal care, it could actually fucking bankrupt them. And at the same time, if you do that, we're going to give the rapists the ability to sue you or to sue your family. What is this? The fuck is this? 2022. This is not the conversation we should be having. This is so far, like, it's just like Christian fucking far-right individuals ruling by a minority have overtaken legislative bodies in the US, whether that be at the state level or in the Supreme Court, and they're ruling against the wishes of the majority of the American people, and they're winning, and that's the fucked up thing. So no, it's not the time to sit back and just listen to Joe Biden as he's like, well, this is going to be an important issue come the midterms. Yes, it is. By all means, please don't vote for Republicans, because they seem to be utterly and completely fucked. But at the same time, there has to be a dramatic call to what the fuckery is going on. There has to be people on the streets demanding fundamental changes to the system itself that allows this to happen, because the right and the far right, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop doing this, and they have shown that they have the power to enact this kind of stuff, even if they don't control all the branches of government. That no longer matters, and they're very fucking effective at this. They're effective, they're organized, and they're spending lots and lots of money to make sure this continues. And at the same time, they're trying to control other aspects of the media in order to flood you with the idea that, hey, this isn't as bad as it sounds, or this might not be as extreme as it is, but it is, and it should be recognized for what it is, because we have people on the streets who are targeting like LGBTQ+ and are openly calling themselves Christian fascists. John Doyle is fine walking out on the street with a megaphone, yelling at children, telling them that their parents are trying to cut their dicks off, and saying that he's openly a Christian fascist. This is not like the time to be like, wow, this could be pretty bad in a couple years. This shit is here and now, and they are fucking ruling as a minority, and that shit is fucked up. People need to organize against this.
Washington State, and she shared her story throughout this year. A witness in a congressional hearing about abortion because she had an abortion. She had a difficult pregnancy at one period in her life and deemed that it was appropriate to have an abortion. So she's been very outspoken about this issue. And I asked her what her reaction was when she heard the news this morning. She said she's still processing it. And even though the draft leak came out last month, making it formal, it feels like a different thing for a lot of people on Capitol Hill, especially those who wanted to protect abortion access. She said, I asked her what is she going to do in the immediacy after this decision, and she told me she's channeling her tears and her rage right now and working at the local level. She said,
yeah, I mean, you think this would be some Black Mirror shit, but it's happening here and now. A location data firm is selling information related to visits to clinics that provide abortion, including Planned Parenthood, facilities showing where groups of people visiting from locations come from, how long they stayed there, and where they went afterwards, according to sets of data purchased by Motherboard. The data sale is obviously more important in the context of a leaked Supreme Court draft decision in which Justice Alito indicated that the court is ready to repeal the decision, and that just happened today. How data collecting intersects with abortion rights or lack thereof is likely to gather more attention in the wake of the draft. The country may also see an increase in vigilante activity or forms of surveillance and harassment against those seeking or providing abortions. There's a lot of fucking shit I can't say online online without risking my entire stream. But if you're going to these protests, especially protests today, either turn your phone into airplane mode or just don't bring your phone at all. With this aggregated location data, that's anyone to open to the market, customers can include anti-abortion vigilantes as well. Anti-abortion groups are already fairly adept at using novel technology for their goals. In 2016, an advertising CEO who worked for an anti-abortion and Christian group sent targeted advertisement to women sitting in Planned Parenthood clinics in an attempt to change the decision around getting an abortion. The sale of the location data raises questions around why companies are selling data based on abortion clinics specifically, and whether they should introduce more safeguards around the purchase of that information, if be selling it at all. I would say the second one. It's bonkers dangerous to have abortion clinics and then let someone buy the census tracts where people are coming from or visit that abortion clinic. So again, if you're leaving the house to do anything related to your own healthcare, if you are a woman, if you are a trans man, if you're non-binary, and you want to even speak to a doctor apparently about any of this stuff, don't bring your phone. Turn it on airplane mode because you may be tracked and it could be used against you. In the wake of a near total abortion ban in Texas, for example, people in Texas seeking abortions have increasingly had to travel to other states where abortion access is easier to get the care they need. With Roe set to fall, people seeking abortions who live in conservative states can afford are likely to start traveling to get an abortion. Location data could play into whether or not how that travel is identified, making it even more urgent for regulators and lawmakers to consider how location data is collected, used, and sold. The company selling the data is SafeGraph. SafeGraph ultimately obtains location data from ordinary apps installed on people's phones. Often app developers install code called software development kits into their apps to send users location data to companies in exchange for the developer receiving payment. Sometimes app users don't know their phone, or be that via a prayer app or weather app, is collecting and sending location data to third parties, let alone some of the more dangerous use cases where Motherboard has reported on, including transferring data to U.S. military contractors. Cool stuff, normal. Planned Parenthood is not the organization performing the data collecting, nor is benefiting from it financially. SafeGraph then repackages that location data and other data into various products. On Tuesday, Motherboard reported that the CDC bought $420,000 worth of SafeGraph data for a laundry list of COVID-19 and non-COVID-19 use cases. SafeGraph classifies Planned Parenthood as a brand that can be tracked, and the data Motherboard purchases include more than 600 Planned Parenthood locations in the United States. The data included a week's worth of location data for locations in mid-April. SafeGraph calls location data patterns. In total, the data cost us $160. Not all Planned Parenthood locations offer abortion services, but Motherboard verified that some facilities include the purchase database. So, Motherboard also searched SafeGraph website for family planning, which returned a relevant result of family planning centers that people could then buy data related to. SafeGraph's patterns data aims to answer questions like how often people visit, how long they stay, where they come from, where they go, and more. SafeGraph calculates whether it believes visitors to a location live in the census block level. SafeGraph does this by analyzing where a phone is commonly located overnight. SafeGraph's data is aggregated, meaning it isn't explicitly specifying where certain devices move to. Instead, it focuses on movements of groups and devices. But researchers have repeatedly warned about the possibilities of unmasking individuals contained in allegedly anonymized data sets. That's like the only saving grace, is if these are actually anonymized, but... And the data showing where people travel to a certain clinic based on their census block, potentially across state borders, Edward said SafeGraph is going to be the weapon of choice for anti-choice radicals attempting to target out-of-state clinics for providing medical care. This also applies dramatically to trans people who are trying to seek trans-affirming care, by the way. Turn off your phones. Turn off your fucking... put it on airplane mode, or don't even risk that. Don't bring the phone at all, apparently. Tracking visitors to abortion clinics has long been a staple in showing the threat passed by location data. In 2018 investigation, the New York Times took location data following multiple people and decided unmasked some of those. One of the people followed visited a Planned Parenthood facility, according to the report. Recently, a Christian-focused outlet, the Pillar, published a piece that used location data for the movements on unspecified priests and outed them publicly to get potentially gay content without his consent. Planned Parenthood did not respond for requests for comment. SafeGraph did not respond for requests for comment, which included all the specific questions on whether the company would continue to sell location data related to abortion clinics, because they're going to, obviously.
Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, like contraception, which is essential for preventative health care. Mifepristone, which the FDA approved 20 years ago to safely end early pregnancy.
That's not sus, Winston. It's the fucking Catholic Church. Like, yeah, of course. This is the shit they are reveling in. The Catholic Church has fucking done so much evil and cruel shit and is like one of the largest pedophile organizations on the entire fucking planet. The fact that a large country with a long democratic tradition has changed its position on this issue also challenges the whole world. Fuck the Vatican and the pedophile priests. I completely agree with that statement. The Vatican was fucking responsible for an unfathomable amount of deaths at the height of the AIDS crisis in countries in Africa when they were recommending people not use condoms. Like, fuck the Vatican.
Last month's draft opinion that came out on Dobbs that the White House has been preparing for this day, and specifically Vice President Harris has been having meetings with those abortion providers, people who have insight on the law on this issue, to prepare for this moment. And the plan seemed to have always been to put forward these executive actions, emergency actions, and you know, that is the power that the executive branch holds. But when it comes to Congress, they could undo executive actions. And in fact, there is a group of Republicans just yesterday who introduced legislation to undo any executive actions on abortion that President Biden puts forward. That effort was led by Marco Rubio of Florida, and he was joined by about 12.
And make no mistake, by the way, the intersection between white supremacy and also patriarchy could not be on more display. The more shit you see coming out every single day about legislating trans people, what is a woman by Matt Walsh, all that kind of stuff, it's because it actually throws the entire paradigm into question. They're unable to process any of this shit because it does fucking threaten these systems of hierarchies that they want to maintain, the order that they want to maintain. But make no mistake, all of this shit is the same old draconian stuff about legislating and controlling women's bodies, legislating and controlling women, and maintaining the hierarchies of order that they want to do. The same way they want to maintain the racial caste system, the same way they want to maintain the hierarchy of white supremacy. The same shit keeps on playing out, and you see it so blatantly with fucking far-right Christian theocratic Republicans. Like, it could not be more clear and transparent. And as soon as you can establish that, you realize why they have such a fear of all these things, why they will fight so dramatically against trans rights and trans issues, because it throws the entire idea of this paradigm of having a patriarchal order in which men need to be at the very top of the system as white men, cis white men specifically, and everything else that comes down with that, and anything that threatens that, anything that even flies in the face of that and disproves it time and time again through science. We can show you endless amounts of data on this, that, you know, gender is a social construct, race is a social construct. We should not be organizing society based on this fucking draconian caste system, but yet they will still try to do that, and they will fucking die trying to make sure they maintain that structure. That power structure has to be a core fundamental principle of all of this.
Lawmakers, Republican lawmakers in this.
For us, it's like no question in my mind, and I'm sure Maisha's mind, whenever there's a protest happening, it feels like sometimes protests are the only things we can do, and so it feels like necessary to come out and support and just be like another voice trying to advocate and fight for rights that shouldn't be in question.
Going forward, it's been said that as of today, you may have fewer rights, will have fewer rights than your mothers did in this particular case. What's next for you? How do you kind of see this playing out as younger women kind of in this new age?
Again, I think it's like trying to support ourselves, find ways to support ourselves when we see that the government has no inclination to protect us, and finding ways to support and protect other women of color, Black women, trans men, and non-binary people.
How about you?
Hell yeah.
Thinking about what our mothers, both of our mothers are immigrants, and so they came here 20 years ago, and so it's a very different life we've led in our formative years than they did. And so
Malcolm, the name was supposed to be a joke.
It's kind of a new terrain for us.
Like, for people asking where does the name of the show come from, me and Dave were throwing ideas around for the podcast, and then I was like, oh, what about the serfs? Obviously playing into serfdom and feudalism and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of making a wink and a nod to the fact that, in some ways we kind of live in a modern day and neo-feudal state, and that was just kind of going to be a thing. And he was like, oh, brilliant, let's do that. We went with that, and it was way more of a joke 4 or 5 years ago
versus what we have to experience. But it is, as people have been saying today, immigrant.
This also needs to be stressed, by the way, when I say this disproportionately will affect people of color, it's because, again, we have this really fucked up, system in which there is a hierarchy under capitalism and there are multiple structures under capitalism, and disproportionately there are going to be more poor Black Americans, more poor Indigenous Americans who have less access and less ability to be able to do things like move out of state, like travel somewhere else if they need to get an abortion, or even be able to afford an abortion in the first place, because that is going to be an expensive procedure in the United States, unlike other countries that will cover it.
Speakers who have been speaking, this isn't really the future that they expected coming over, so hopefully we will see a change in our lifetimes.
Some more sentiments from in front of the Supreme Court. Libby, will send it back to you.
Thanks so much, Lee Powell, reporting for us live. Let's bring Amber Phillips into the conversation. She writes the 5-Minute Fix for the Washington Post and has been covering this breaking news. Amber, let's talk about the politics of this and how the Supreme Court justices, in the majority opinion by Justice Alito, sort of said they weren't really thinking about the politics, right? They're focused on the issue, not the politics.
Yeah, that's right, Libby. When I read Justice Alito's opinion, which is very...
How can this, fuck that noise? That I hate this. I fucking hate this. Like, the idea that we have these Supreme Court justices, the entire idea of the institution is that these individuals, they're going to be apolitical, and they're just going to uphold the law of the Constitution, or documents written by slave owners. That's basically what this entire institution is going to do. And of course, human beings don't have any biases inherent to them. That's totally a thing that could be real and true. They get in there, and they're not going to interpret these old texts written by slave owners, again, in order to pass things that have a political agenda. That's exactly what happens, And oh, whoa, I mean, you could say there was a slight bias in this, and this seems to be a very bizarre interpretation of these old texts, again, written by slave owners. But hey, let's just say that this is maybe an aberration. This is not going to be what regularly is.
Similar to this draft opinion that was leaked in May. What struck me was exactly that. Was he essentially was saying, I don't care. He seemed very...
Fucking, of course, Lauren Southern, white supremacist. Alert, post your Roe v. Wade memes below. The epic. Fucking, what is this garbage?
Very aware as he was reading that by a margin of nearly 2-1, a majority of Americans want to keep Roe in place. That being said, when you ask about specific abortion bans and weeks, it gets messy and it's difficult to really pull how Americans feel about abortion. But consistently, according especially to our own Washington Post polling, Americans do want to keep Roe in place. And he seemed very aware of that. And then he wrote, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but that he doesn't care about the politics of this, that it was his job, he thought, to return abortion law and abortion legal precedent in America back to what the Constitution says, which is it makes no mention of abortion, therefore get the Supreme Court out of abortion. And I just think it's interesting that...
Does the Constitution grant women any rights?
Despite all the public pressure and the uproar and the unprecedented nature of a leak of his opinion from a couple months ago, it didn't change anything. It was exactly the same. He doubled down on a lot of really controversial ideas, like comparing this to racial segregation, for example.
Yeah, talk to us more about that comparison.
Yeah, so it just...
Women are indeed missing from the Constitution. That's a problem to remedy, not a precedent to honor. Alito cites a number of 18th century texts. He does not cite anything written by a woman, and not because there's nothing available. The laws respecting women, Mary Wollstonecraft wrote in A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1791, make an absurd unit of a man and his wife, and then, by the easy transition of not only considering him as responsible, she is reduced to a mere cipher. She is but a part of him. She herself does not exist, but instead, as Wollstonecraft wrote, is a non-entity. If a right isn't mentioned explicitly in the Constitution, Alito argues, following a mode of reasoning known as a historical test, then it can only become a right if she can be shown to be deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. As I've argued, the history test disadvantages people who were not enfranchised at the time the Constitution was written, or who have been poorly enfranchised since then. Especially important is the question of who was enfranchised at the time of the ratification of the 14th Amendment. In 1868, the nation's second founding, since many arguments defended abortion rights and many other rights too, turn on equal protection and due process clauses by the amendment. Here too, Alito was baffled to discover so little about abortion and women, referring to advocates of the Jackson Women's Health Organization and to amicus briefs like the one signed by the American Historical Association. Alito writes, not only are respondents and their amici unable to show a constitutional right to abortion was established when the 14th Amendment was adopted, but they found no support for the existence of an abortion right that predates the latter part of the 20th century. No state constitutional provision, no statute, no judicial decision, no learned treaties. He might have consulted the records of the U.S. Senate from the debate of the 14th Amendment when Jacob Howard, a Republican senator from Michigan, got into an argument with Reverend D. Johnson, a Democrat from Maryland. Howard quoted James Madison, who had written that those who are bound by laws ought to have a voice in making them. This got Johnson terribly worried because the 14th Amendment uses the word person. He wanted to know, did Howard mean to suggest that women could be construed as persons too? Mr. Johnson says, quote, females as well as males? Mr. Howard, Mr. Madison does not say anything about females. Mr. Johnson, persons. Mr. Howard, I believe Mr. Madison was old enough and wise enough to take it for granted that there is such a thing as the law of nature, which has a certain influence even in political affairs, and that by law women and children are not regarded as equals of men. Just flat out saying it out loud. Alito, shocked to discover so little in the law books of the 1860s guaranteeing a right to an abortion, but missed the point. Hardly anything in the law books of the 1860s guarantees women anything, because usually they weren't still persons, nor for that matter were fetuses. I don't happen to think Roe was well argued, but I agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg early analysis that grounding the right in equality rather than in privacy might have been a sounder approach. I'm not even a hardliner on the question of abortion. I find it morally thorny, but when Samuel Alito says that people who believe abortions is a constitutional right have no persuasive answer to this historical evidence, he displays nothing so much as the limits of his own evidence. The page of history teems with women's wrongs. As 19th century abolitionist Sarah Grimke once put it, it does not teem with women's rights. To use history as a discrimination to deny people their constitutional rights is a perversion of logic and a betrayal of justice. Would the court decide civil rights cases regarding race by looking exclusively to the laws and statutes written before emancipation? That's like the thing I keep screaming from the mountaintops to people who are constitutionalists. They were written by slave owners. At the close of this opinion, Alito congratulates himself both in the court with this ruling. They are enfranchising women. Our decision allows women on both sides of the abortion issue to seek to affect the legislative process by influencing public opinion, lobbying legislators, voting, and running for office rights. What a fucked up thing to say. Like, hey, baby, get to work if you want rights. Women are not without electoral or political power.
If there was anything about that Women's Health Protection Act that could be parsed out and could be voted in a singular way instead of voting completely to codify Roe, so she said they're still going to push it. So that legislatively, it all remains to be seen what they could do. I do know that the Senate Judiciary Committee did announce today that they are already going to have hearings on what a post-Roe America looks like and the ramifications of today. Senator Durbin announced that they will have that hearing on July 12th. So it appears that off the floor, Democrats especially will continue to sort of beat the drum of saying that this decision is unfair, it's unprecedented to throw.
That's like suggesting that only black people are responsible for combating slavery, disenfranchisement, and discrimination. Yep.
Out what was deemed settled law for almost half of a century. They're going to keep that.
Man, Twitter's a bad place to be today. There's so many heartbreaking tweets. Like, just read one now that I'm on a train right now, and the number of women who have tears in their eyes, including myself, is something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. Like, what the fuck?
Conversation going, but legislatively, I'm not sure what could happen after this point.
Yeah, let's go to James Homan for more on that. James, you know, it's an awkward situation for someone like Susan Collins, and there's a lot of sort of eye rolling about, well, what did you really expect to happen by, you know, these very conservative nominees and now justices being seated on the court for this supermajority that they have? What are you noticing about that conversation?
I've been struck by the number of prominent Republicans who are calling for a federal ban on abortion. The most prominent among them today is Mike Pence, the former vice president who wants to run in 2024. Obviously, has had a star turn in recent days as part of the January 6th hearing process. He gave an interview to Breitbart News where he talked about his desire to take federal action, which is sort of at odds with the Supreme Court's posture of leaving this to the states. But for a lot of the same reasons Rhonda was just talking about, there's not going to be 60 Republican votes in the Senate.
Just saw a link for a story saying Americans traveling to Mexico for abortions now.
The Supreme Court could release its highly anticipated ruling that could overturn Roe versus Wade as early as this morning, in a matter of minutes, actually. And as we await that decision, many women in states with newly restrictive abortion laws are resorting to new measures to obtain the care they need. NBC News correspondent and NBC News Now anchor Morgan Radford joins us with that story. Morgan, good morning.
Willie, good morning. I mean, these are new measures, but they're also desperate ones. In fact, several states like Texas have passed new restrictive abortion laws, so that's dramatically reduced the number of abortions in the state. But that has not stopped women from seeking abortions elsewhere. It simply forced them to take these desperate, drastic measures, driving hours across state lines to neighboring states with fewer restrictions, or even fleeing the country altogether.
For many women, Dr. Franz Theard is their last chance. His New Mexico practice is one of just a few remaining abortion clinics along the U.S.-Mexico border, just 1 mile west of the Texas state line.
We've increased by 100, so we do about 250 a month now.
Abortions per month?
Per month.
That jump since last September, when a Texas law banned abortions as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. Before that, the state allowed them up to 20 weeks.
Not doing an abortion because you're 6 weeks or 5 weeks is almost like not doing abortions at all.
But some of those who can't find the help they're looking for across state lines are leaving the country entirely. Many American women are coming here to Mexico to buy abortion pills. The most commonly used does not require a prescription and costs about 1/10 of the price. We're about to meet 2 women who provide abortion services out of their home here in Mexico. Just outside of Monterrey, activists Vanessa Jimenez and Sandra Cardona founded La Aborteria, where they provide the abortion-inducing drug misoprostol and guide women on how to take it. They say they've seen a dramatic surge of American clients since the Texas law went into effect.
Con 2 o 3 chicas de Estados Unidos al año.
5 por semana. Sí. So before you were seeing 2 to 3 American women a year. Now you're seeing 5 American women a week.
A veces más.
And sometimes more.
Sí.
¿Y de dónde vienen específicamente? And where are they coming from specifically?
Que han venido aquí a México de Texas.
So the majority of women you're seeing are coming from Texas.
And they're not alone. Another Mexican organization, which opened its doors in January, says Americans now make up 25% of its customers.
¿Me pueden dar un ejemplo? Por ejemplo, ¿qué les dicen? Can you give me an example? What do the women coming from Texas tell you?
La mayoría viene con mucho miedo.
It's fear, not only of going to jail, but the economic penalties. And you're saying even though there hasn't been a case since the law changed in September in Texas, it's enough to inspire so much fear.
A fear that's driving many women even further from home.
Sandra and Vanessa say that most of their patients contact them actually through social media like Facebook or WhatsApp, often more than 6 weeks pregnant, and many of them afraid of legal repercussions. But in the meantime, abortion providers on both sides of the border tell us that they do expect to see even more women coming through their doors if, in fact, Roe v. Wade is overturned, and they say they will be ready.
And yeah, I mean, that's awesome. They're providing all that. If you do !safe access, there's links for, being able to procure Plan C, which is apparently a safe legal pill that you can take to perform a safe abortion at home. In addition to all of this, and I don't know if that's going to be banned, by the way, it's probably going to be banned in the US at some point following all these decisions. I think Canada should be also opening its doors to any American that needs to get access to a safe abortion, and not provide some kind of, questioning at the border. Why are you if it's, I'm coming to Canada to get an abortion, just all right, come right in, That's like 100% what should be happening. I'm not going to post abortion recipes on the stream avail because I think that's pretty risky for TOS.
It's official. Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court. So for the first time in the history of the Supreme Court, they have
talking about how it's not a new thing. That's the whole point. No, I understand that. I'm just not going to put it on screen.
Taken away a fundamental constitutional right. This is unprecedented, and this is a very dark day in American history because we are losing a fundamental constitutional right that we've had for 50 years. For a lot of people, this is all that we've known. I've only lived in a world where abortion is safe and legal in this country. But now that changes immediately. So as Politico reports, the Supreme Court on Friday revoked the constitutional right to an abortion that has been in place for half a century, overturning Roe v. Wade on a 5-4 vote, clearing the way for dozens of states to swiftly ban the procedure and throwing the country into uncharted political, legal, social, and medical territory. The majority opinion, authored by Justice Samuel Alito, hewed closely to the draft version obtained exclusively by Politico and published in early May. In its official opinion, the court's conservative majority went beyond simply resolving the case before them, Mississippi's near ban on abortion at 15 weeks of pregnancy, and instead overturned both Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, long-standing precedents that barred states from banning abortion before the point of fetal viability. Now, we'll get to the dissenting opinion from the liberal justices here in a moment, but for a second, I just want you to stop and cherish this moment that we're in right now. Because as bad as it may seem, 1, 2, 3 years from now, it is going to get even worse. We will have even less rights. So as bad as it is right now, this is only the beginning, and the right is broadcasting their intent to go even further. For example, former Vice President Mike Pence celebrated this news, saying, "Today life won," and he called for a total ban on abortion in all 50 states. And abortion is not the only civil right that's under threat, because as Politico continues, and while Alito's opinion insisted that overturning Roe and Casey endangered no rights guaranteed by other past court decisions, Justice Clarence Thomas's view of what that assurance meant seemed certain to fuel fears that rulings many Americans rely on could be next on the chopping block. Quote, "In future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell," Thomas wrote in a solo concurrence, referring to a 1965 decision finding a right to contraception for married couples, a 2003 decision that overturned criminal sodomy laws, and a 2015 decision requiring states to recognize same-sex marriages. Quote, "We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents." So Justice Clarence Thomas makes it abundantly clear that this is only the beginning. He's saying in his concurring opinion that we should not just ban gay marriages, not just ban contraception, but also ban sodomy once again. So they're trying to make being gay intimacy, illegal in the United States. So if you are a married couple 2-3 years from now, it's not just the case that your marriage might be invalidated, but you being in a gay relationship might be deemed illegal. That's where we're at in the United States once again. Now, the liberal justices warned that this would be the case in their dissenting opinion, writing, "Withdrawing a woman's right to choose whether to continue a pregnancy does not mean that no choice is being made. It means that a majority of today's court has wrenched this choice from women and given it to the states," the Democratic-appointed justices wrote. "Women have relied on Roe and Casey in this way for 50 years. Many have never known anything else. When Roe and Casey disappear, the loss of power, control, and dignity will be immense." The court's liberals also predicted that the Republican-appointed majority's willingness to override a nearly half-century-old precedent bodes ill for other decisions regularly relied upon by Americans and for respect for the legal system. Quote, "It makes the court appear not restrained but aggressive, not modest but grasping. In all those ways today's decision takes aim, we fear, at the rule of law," Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan wrote. Yeah, and they're absolutely correct about that. The court has zero legitimacy. We should not recognize this court. They are a rogue institution trying to impose this minoritarian Christian nationalist view on every single member of society, even if we don't want them to do this, even if these decisions are overwhelmingly unpopular. Now, what you are going to...
And they've been so fast and furious. God damn. Like almost every single day this week, it's been something else for like, what are you serious? Miranda rights? What? Actually, what? Like the separation of church and state? Holy shit. How far back do we have to go? Like, let's just go. Like at first I was like, it's going to be the Wild Wild West. And it's like, no. We're going further back than that.
Expect, or what you should expect rather, over the weekend is a trickle of headlines of states one by one banning abortion. For example, news anchor Hunter Hoagland of Arkansas reports Planned Parenthood of Little Rock confirms all scheduled abortions have been canceled. So this ruling is having an immediate effect. Women who had their abortions scheduled are no longer able to get them in many states. Now, at the time that I record this, there's people protesting in D.C., but there's nothing too significant at the moment. I'm expecting that to change, but regardless, even if there's not really a huge presence there yet, riot police have shown up, presumably to intimidate protesters, and I just want everyone to make a mental note of the fact that cops are more prepared to contain legitimate protests from angry citizens than they were to contain the January 6th insurrection, where thousands of fascists stormed the Capitol in an effort to end democracy. Remember, these cops are not there to protect you. They are there explicitly to protect property and elites. Your civil rights, your safety is not of their concern whatsoever.
Oh, the vice president is making a statement. Let's see what it is.
And as the president said earlier today, your vote, you can act, and you have the final word.
But the administration seems to recognize that the president's power to protect...
So just vote. That's pretty much the statement. Because I missed the start of that.
At Health and Human Services to sort of head up a reproductive...
Lawmakers, the Democrats say, into that building that you see on your screen so that they can help put in place federal protections of Roe into law. The President Biden is laying out some of what his own administration and federal agencies can do to try to help a woman get access in some ways, like defending women who now have to travel to another state for care and protecting access to contraception and abortion pills. Joining me now...
You have the final word. Yeah, that is such a fucked up way to word it, you know? I mean, the choice is yours, ladies. Do you want this? Are you, like, that's basically the same way the decision was worded, too. It, like, came down from Alito, and it's just like, well, I mean, this now lands in the hands of women. So you have political power, you have voting power, you have the will, and this is something that you can determine amongst yourselves.
Is Josh Letterman. Josh, this issue of abortion medication is particularly interesting, right? Because this is an area where the Biden administration can work through federal agencies to help maintain access to some abortion services. No?
Okay, do that.
That's exactly right, and that is exactly what the White House says that they are doing today. President Biden saying that he is directing the Health and Human Services Department to figure out whatever they can do to maximize access to abortion medications for people to be able.
Make it free. Make it free and available to anyone who needs it through the mail, just like that.
To use that as an option if getting a surgical abortion
like you can't on one end just keep saying things like just vote, just vote, just vote, and this is a voter's issue. The choice is yours. The midterms are right around the corner, and I'm not even someone who's telling anyone not to do that. You shouldn't vote for more, let more Republicans come to power. Clearly what they do, even with a little bit of power, is fucking abhorrent. But on the other end, if you're just going to say this is clearly a campaign issue, you know, we're going to need donations, money, your time, all that kind of stuff. You know, I don't know if you're busy, if you've got 2 jobs you're working, don't know how hard rent is. Cost of gas is pretty bad, but you know, we're going to have that gas holiday, you know, so that's coming up. You have to fucking do anything that you have within your tool set. Fine. You don't want to fire the parliamentarian? Fine. You don't want to, you know, pass an executive order? Then go through another channel. Get creative. The Republicans are extremely creative when it comes to this kind of shit. They've shown time and time again they can do any kind of tactic possible to get through their agenda. So yeah, maybe you should make access to Plan C something that is going to be covered under taxation. I don't know. Maybe shave $20 billion off the military budget. Boom, it's already paid for. Distribute that. Send that out to anyone who needs it through a website. Make it available to any family that needs it. It can be anonymous. Make sure you do some kind of shit to hide IPs, and then people have safe access to abortion medication at home, and let everyone know that this is how you can get this product, and make sure that it arrives to people fucking very, very fast. There you go. On that end, then people can turn and look towards your administration and be like, well, they are, you know, willing to fight. Maybe come the midterms, we should put a little bit of time into spending the fucking 8 to 9 hours it takes to vote that day in America, which is also completely fucked, but
access to telehealth and to prescriptions by mail. So that is one pillar of what the White House is doing in response to the ruling today.
The
other major pillar has to do with travel, particularly for women who are going from one state where it's no longer legal to another state. President Biden saying the Justice Department is going to fight any state or local officials who try to interfere in someone's ability to go to another state, which is not something that today's decision precludes. But the reality is that's about all that this White House can do, Hallie. President Biden openly acknowledging today that it's not like he can whip out an executive order and with the stroke of a pen restore a right that the Supreme Court today said doesn't exist.
We're also hearing from former President Trump today, Josh, who says this decision was only made possible because he says he delivered everything as promised, including nominating and getting 3 highly respected and strong constitutionalists confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. That is something that President Biden went after in his speech. He went after the 3 justices that Donald Trump appointed. Justices, we've talked about it, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, talking about why 2016 is so important as part of his pitch to get people out to vote in the next election. It feels like this is another flashpoint, Josh, as we look ahead not just to the midterms, but potentially to 2024.
It is, and it was so interesting to see the president in the cross hall of the White House, this kind of very stately atmosphere.
Okay, so we found out the couple things the Biden administration could do, or say they could do.
Period, full stop. You need to get that through your head if you haven't acknowledged this yet. Now, the Democratic Party has responded, and somehow they've managed to take a serious situation and reassure no one and offer a more unhinged response than usual. Biden predictably decided to pen a strongly worded letter in the form of a tweet saying this fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify a woman's right to choose into federal law. We need to elect more state leaders.
We're totally going to do it this time. I know last time we said we'd do it, and then Obama came to power, and then we had a super majority. So there's like literally no excuse, none whatsoever, outside of the fact that we just decided not to. That's it. We cannot blame anyone for that one. We can't blame the Republicans there. We can't blame anybody. That's just ourselves. That's it. But this time, we are going to do it. Yes.
To protect this right at the local level, we need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. Now, you're probably reasonably thinking, but wait, Biden, you're the president right now, and you're almost certainly going to lose power in November, so why wouldn't you fight right now?
Yeah.
Are you seriously telling us that we have to elect more people in order for you to begin fighting for us when we already put you in?
Like, the Democrats are going to get smoked in the midterms. Like, if this was a genuine thing in which it's like, I have to do everything in my power in order to not allow these very, very far right elements of the Republican Party to come to power in November, well, go down the list. What about pardoning nonviolent drug offenders? What about forgiving student debt? You know, at the swipe of a fucking pen, things that voters are going to be like, holy shit, this resonates with me. This actually changed the material conditions of my lives. I am no longer in prison. Disproportionately, that's going to affect a lot more Black Americans than any other group as well, by the way. So I don't know, Joe. Like, fucking, there's a lot of things you can do. You're the president. Like, every single time this shit comes up, it can't be, like, the Democrats' response is so fucking infuriating. It's always just like, well, you know, we're going to send a strongly worded letter. That's for sure. We may dress up in some costumes and then kneel together. That's another thing that's going to happen. That'll probably change the world. And then we're really going to need your votes. We're going to need your votes for us to keep doing the things we're doing. Because look what you get. Look what you get when you vote for us. Look at all this thing. You got a whole bunch of it. Muchas cosas. Yeah, we speak Spanish too. It's great.
Office, and the answer is yes. He's saying they're not going to fight. But his response literally was more reasonable than the House Democratic Party's response, because Nancy Pelosi decided to read a poem, and also on the Capitol steps, House Democrats saying, God bless America. I mean, this is genuinely the most bizarre thing that I've seen. And this is, let me remind you, the
White House rumors are Harris been begging Biden to cancel at least $50,000 student debt for weeks, and Biden shoos her away and talks with his Republican friends. Do you have a link to that? Is that like a Politico story?
Response from the only...
We need more Kente cloth. That'll solve it. I mean, Kente cloth single-handedly ended racism. So, I mean, there has to be an equivalent to be able to protect women, trans men, and non-binary reproductive rights. I'm sure there's something they could do. Maybe a new musical, you know, we could get like a Hamilton 2 going. Maybe make it like government-funded Hamilton 2, and then that could change some things.
Only opposition party that we have who's in power who can stop these fascists. But this is what they're doing.
I am personally...
The Onion isn't taking any prisoners today. Supreme Court votes 5-4 to throw beer bottle at slut. Holy shit. Supreme Court rules 5-4 to reopen Japanese internment camp. Serfs. Supreme Court votes 5-4 to lock nation's toddlers in hot cars. Supreme Court votes 5-4 to drive slowly alongside woman walking home alone at night. Supreme Court rules 5-4 to add Jesus into all paintings. Supreme Court rules 5-4 to make it illegal for women to deceive men with makeup. The Jordan Peterson law, it's been enacted. Finally, the deception will not continue. No more red lipstick. What is it to note? That's amazing. Supreme Court rules 5-4 to baptize the Constitution. Oh, thank you, Onion. Oh man, honestly, I'm serious. Like, genuinely, thank you, The Onion, for what you do. Like, you do like a service that cannot be understated. Supreme Court rules 5-4 to reclassify women as service animals. Holy shit! Holy shit! Wow, The Onion. The other fucking scary thing about The Onion is that, like, people have been non-stop posting old Onion articles that are supposed to be considered parody that are shockingly close to the reality of America right now. Like, holy shit. Oh, man. Stoker Award nominated writer, Hugo nominated editor for Fantasy and Horror, he, him. Pronouns in bio, retweeting. You see, I have the opposite effect of conservatives. I know conservatives, it's pronouns in bio. I no longer can have a cogent argument. I'm now just going to start typing gibberish and mocking the pronouns. For me, it's I feel like I'm in a safe space, you know? I feel like I've been given my safe space from that shit. Okay, here's a list of what Biden can actually do. Here is what I will do everything I can would look like from a president of the United States. I didn't hear everything I can. The federal government still has power to protect abortion rights, and it's time the Biden administration used it. I've read my free articles. No, that's not true. These are lies. Hold on. One particularly maddening aspect of our current politics is that Democrats feel beholden to rules that Republicans feel entitled to burn. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Holy shit. Democrats creatively interpret rules in ways that inevitably frustrate the ability to wield power, while Republicans creatively use their power to get around the rules. Democrats invent constraints on themselves, ostensibly to restrict Republicans, while these same Democrats long ago decided to use maximal power to achieve their goals. Nowhere is this asymmetry more evident than the reactions to the leaked Supreme Court draft overturning Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. There are things President Joe Biden could do to counteract the Supreme Court's decision to force people to carry pregnancies to term against their will. There are things his administration should be doing already in Texas, where constitutional, for the moment, abortion services have been denied to people since September. I've outlined some of these executive actions here and elsewhere, but in brief, abortion services should be provided on federal lands. Abortion providers should be deputized by the federal government to protect them from state bounty hunters. People seeking abortion services should be granted safe passage to these facilities or out of the state if need be. But every time I or anybody else makes arguments for strong executive action to protect people from Republicans, somebody, often a liberal or Democrat, say the Hyde Amendment prevents the federal government from funding abortions. Anybody who lived through the Trump administration should know that the rarely outright prevents things from funding is a matter of interpretation, but Twitter is awash in so many Hyde takes you'd think the 28th Amendment to the Constitution. I have come to believe that, Voltaire might say, if the Hyde Amendment did not exist, it would be necessary for Democrats to invent it. There are a lot of people invested in the idea that there are secret codes of law that when read under a black light with Captain Crunch decoder rings say the Democrats cannot wield power ever. So let's talk about the Hyde Amendment and what it says, because when you really look at it, you'll see a paper tiger. While inherently effective at preventing poor and vulnerable people from getting the health care they need, it is easily shredded by a committed executive at the head of an administrative state. The Hyde Amendment was proposed in 1976, 3 years after the landmark decision of Roe v. Wade by Illinois Representative Henry Hyde, a white male Republican, shocker, Pikachu face, who didn't like abortion rights. He proposed a rider to the funding bill for the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, now called the Department of Health and Human Services, that prohibited federal Medicaid funds from being used to pay for women to get abortions. The amendment passed both houses of Congress and has been a feature of every budget bill since. The amendment and its modern versions prevent people from enrolling in Medicaid or other government-run programs from using those insurance dollars for abortion procedures, except in the cases of rape or incest. Why does it always need to be stipulated? It's like, yeah, you know what? I guess if it's these very specific, horrifying conditions, will actually grant you bodily autonomy. Not unless it's just in the worst, horrifying possible version that we can construe. In that case, yes, you'll have some bodily, a crumb A crumb of bodily autonomy. You get that. For the rest of the time, no. No, we're forcing you to give birth. Hyde Amendment-esque language has been inserted into a number of healthcare bills, including the Affordable Care Act. That's it. That's the whole thing. And that's not to say the Hyde Amendment isn't a smoldering hunk of misogynist garbage that restricts access to abortions for millions of mostly poor women, often with the complicity of the Democratic Party, which is ostensibly elected to protect impoverished people. But this boogeyman that Democrats argue constrains the commander-in-chief from providing healthcare to U.S. citizens is not and has never been some insurmountable prohibition on federal government action. The idea that the Hyde Amendment restricts all federal action for abortion services is a clear misreading of the amendment. The Hyde Amendment does not, for instance, prevent the government from allowing people in federal prisons to seek abortion services. It does not prevent people from being held in immigration custody from being allowed to seek abortion services. And the astute reader will notice that exceptions in case of rape and incest are written right into the regulation. It is simply inaccurate to say the amendment in its current form prevents the federal government from doing anything that could lead to an abortion. The Hyde Amendment is about insurance coverage. Wow. So yeah, maybe the federal government could establish medical centers in federal land, which, you know, couldn't be overtaken by the state rights argument, and then not even specifically develop an abortion clinic, because that would never happen, but develop a medical center. Those are just facts. What one should do with the knowledge of those facts is open for interpretation. What one should do with the knowledge of those facts while in charge of the executive branch of government is still another thing. I will stipulate that everything I'm about to say will be disputed by Republicans. If that matters to you, I don't know how to help you. I do not allow my thinking to be cabled by the confines of what Republicans agree with, because my desire to live in a pluralist society built on justice and equality outweighs my desire to be liked by the New York Times. But in my opinion, this now boilerplate budget amendment cannot prevent the might of the executive office from fighting for women's rights. Here are 4 obvious workarounds. And this rings so fucking true over Joe Biden. Like, I don't know what Joe Biden is consistently obsessed with, having to, like, you know, reach across the aisle, please other people, going on talk shows and being like, I know this will get me in trouble, but Mitch McConnell, you know, not all bad, actually. Like, what the fuck? Make everything free. As I read the Hyde Amendment, it does not prevent the federal government from providing space for family planning consultations given by doctors who are releasing the space out of their own pockets. It does not prevent private citizens from funding or reimbursing those doctors for their consultation service through private means. Because medical privileges are generally governed by state law, not federal law, it might require different executive actions to allow doctors to perform actual medical procedures in those federally leased buildings, and that has nothing to do with the Hyde Amendment. Moreover, the amendment would not prevent these privately funded doctors from providing vacations for patients to states that do not allow the necessary medical procedures to be performed. I'd chip in money to help every expectant mother visit the New York until fetal viability, just because it's so nice here. Make the military do it. For better or worse, Biden's power as commander-in-chief is its apex. The Hyde Amendment is not what prevents military doctors or doctors deputized into military service from performing abortion services. Instead, there are a number of funding restrictions passed annually as part of the defense budget, as well as some restrictions made up by President Ronald Reagan and carried forward that make getting an abortion while on active duty in the military very hard. It's even hard for service members to use their own money to seek legal abortion services from non-military doctors. However, Biden is the commander-in-chief. He should have already been using his power to make abortions easier to obtain in the military, and must do so now. If the president begins to order military doctors to provide healthcare, there is little that funding writers could do to stop him. If the president orders the military to protect on their bases abortion providers giving out services for free, or to provide safe passage to women seeking abortions in other states, there is nothing congressional funders could do to stop him. Again, things you could do. If it's genuinely you care about this, and we're going to use everything. Like, I've heard that so much from Democrats. Nancy Pelosi was saying the same thing back in the day when Trump was trying to push through a Supreme Court justice just a month out of the election. It was like, we're going to use all the arrows in our quill or whatever it was. And you're just like, are you actually going to use every single tool you have available? Are you going to get creative? Or are you just going to stand by, kind of do decorum, and then campaign on it? Because after all, what else are you going to campaign on? If you can't campaign on how fucking shit the Republicans are, on how evil they are, on how they're marching towards fascism, and how they want to upend democracy, yeah, what else is there? Are you going to be like, well, here's all the cool things we did. Here's a handful of things. We did this one thing. We did cut child poverty in half. Remember that? That was pretty cool for a year. And then we reversed it. But anyways, we did it, and we could do that again. Who knows? Who knows what magic dice you'll get when we roll it, you know? There's so many options. Repeal the Hyde Amendment. Republicans could challenge these actions and enforce goons in the Supreme Court who are eager to force people to carry pregnancies to term would surely back them up. But as I keep saying, Hyde is merely a budgetary amendment. Biden submitted a 2022 budget that didn't include the Hyde Amendment but caved. The 2023 budget proposed also doesn't have a Hyde Amendment attached. If Biden, a lifelong supporter of the Hyde Amendment until he ran for president a third time, thinks the Hyde Amendment is so powerful that it constrains even basic executive or military action, then maybe he could not fold like a chair when it comes up next time around. Biden could act now. Get challenged in the court and basically have those challenges rendered moot by repealing the thing. Ignore the Hyde Amendment. I have in good faith offered credible reasons for why the Hyde Amendment shouldn't apply to a number of executive actions to provide abortion services so long as a Democrat is in the White House. However, another entirely rational play is simply to ignore the amendment, is what Republicans would do. Indeed, the last time a Republican president couldn't get money from Congress to do something Congress explicitly would not fund, he just declared a national emergency or stole the money from the military budget. There's no reason Biden couldn't do that. The Supreme Court's errant ruling has created a national emergency and humanitarian crisis. Like fucking hell, America needs a president who's just going to do what is necessary when the time comes and say fuck it to the Republicans. Like, goddamn. Like, they don't care. That's how they operate. So the Republicans are getting shit done on a regular basis. They don't even have the branches of government. Doesn't fucking matter, apparently. The Supreme Court's errant ruling has created a national emergency and humanitarian crisis. Pregnant people will not be turned into mere incubators on my watch. I hereby create a national guard of doctors and will deploy them into various states to provide healthcare. Fucking amazing. How cool would that sound? How base would this be? The point of all these suggestions is that Biden's and the Democrats should use power maximally while they have it to prevent the atrocity of people being forced to give birth against their will. The argument that or executive action or inaction is not justified but required by a 1976 budget writer is intellectually dishonest and literally evidence that one doesn't perceive forced birth as fundamentally illegitimate to use of state power. There is no law yet that prevents the federal government from helping rape survivors. There is no law yet that requires the federal government to throw up its hands every time it hits the borders of Texas. There is no law to do both of those things should Republicans take back Congress and the White House, because Republicans use power when they have it and when they don't fucking have it is the other part. Maybe Democrats should take a page of the GOP playbook and try out the whole using power thing before it's too late for women, the LGBTQ plus community, and democracy. Great article. Could not agree more with that last part.
Overwhelmed by this decision. From time to time, I quote this poem by Ehud Manor. He's an Israeli poet. I met his wife when I've been in Israel.
Nancy Pelosi, the queen of tone
I have
deaf.
no other country, even though my land is burning. Only a word in Hebrew penetrates my veins, my soul, with an aching body and with a hungry heart.
How does this even cross your mind to like be like, what would be appropriate at a time like this? Should I try to assure the American people, half the population and the LGBTQ plus community, that their rights are not in danger by doing everything within my power and everything within our reach to be able? Am I going to provide safe access to pills that can provide abortions to people? Am I going to actually, use an executive action or a measure and force the president to do? Am I going to do anything? No. You know what this calls for? This calls for a poem about Israeli homeland. That's what this calls for. That seems like the most appropriate thing at this moment.
Here is my home. I will not be silent.
Like, I'm sorry, this is fucking evil shit.
For my country has changed her face. My country has changed her face. I shall not give up on her. I shall remind her and sing into her ears until she opens her eyes. Clearly, we hope that the Supreme Court would open its eyes.
Very glad I don't live somewhere like China or Cuba and instead live in a country founded on democracy, where most laws are decided on by a council of unelected wizards doing seances to ask the ghost of Thomas Jefferson what he thinks. Fucking fire, Elliot. Holy shit. Norms, pervert lose their damn minds when you point out all the myriad ways our country's entire foundation is basically a beta test, but it's true, and you should say it. Hey, while you're here, consider giving money to local abortion networks or funds. Good job. Good job having a fucking banger tweet. Fucking banger viral tweet.
From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, white with foam.
No, I agree with you, Hello World. These are the Democrats, by the way. This isn't a congregation of the Republicans, celebrating their decision. This is them being like, hey, you know what? This also calls for a little patriotism.
It's like we're living in the Twilight Zone. They're singing on the Capitol steps. What are you doing? And I just got to remind you, this comes after members of the
like 100% liberal brain rot. 100%.
Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, James Clyburn, all campaigned for Henry Cuellar.
Yep.
An anti-choice Democrat over the pro-choice Democratic woman. But now they're pretending to be concerned about a woman's right to choose going away. Well, Henry Cuellar, in the event they win a majority in November, which they will not, but he could be the vote that stops them from codifying Roe. And they're sitting here singing to us, reading poems. This is who we have to rely on to fight for us. Do you understand why Americans feel no hope whatsoever? Because if that's our opposition...
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. I felt for the past couple of years, my heart goes out to Americans who are against the Christian far right and against the Christian fascists. And like, you know, when people in other countries are just like, and especially LARPers online are just like, oh, fucking time to burn down the American empire, bro. Let's see the whole country descend into chaos. Gonna be wild. Revolution will be on the streets. It's like, okay, that's fucking super, super brave. You can type all of that while you're living in your parents' basement in San Diego. That's awesome. Meanwhile, if that country descends into full-on Christian fascism or some other aberration, I don't know what it's going to be or what form it's going to take. But should that happen, yeah, we're all fucked globally, okay? America being the imperial hegemonic superpower of the world, lefties, also means that if it descends into outright fascism with the fucking military it has, that is a very, very bad course that needs to be stopped, okay? That's one of the reasons why I care about this shit. And also the lives of Americans. There's fucking over 300 million, you goddamn LARPers. Did you want like fucking over 300 million people to have to suffer, shoot each other, go to civil war, not have access to abortion or healthcare, or die? The same people are going to talk to you globally about how we have to care about the rights of all people and all that kind of stuff. Yes, America is ravaging the rest of the world. Yes, they do horrifying things. There's also people in those countries who don't agree with that fucked up shit. There's people in those countries who would not vote for that fucked up shit. There's people in those countries who are fighting that. They are your allies. They are your comrades. They are the people on the ground who are fighting to end the oppression. You can't fucking turn towards this and just fucking, oh man, yeah, it's going to be based accelerationism, brother.
These unhinged geriatrics, they're the ones who's supposed to protect us from the fascists who have broadcasted to us that they're going to take away our rights. Then we are fucking truly doomed as a country. We are doomed because look at how weak and comically pathetic these Democrats are.
Yeah, it's Christian fascists versus cartoon characters. Like that's the politics of America right now. Fucking like on one end you have John Doyle's and on the other end you have fucking Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, just running around in circles, making noise and sounds, and then you know, on cue being like, don't forget to vote, by the way. Don't forget to vote, by the way. And then it's like, but and in the meantime, I understand your concerns, but don't worry. We have a song coming up. Do you like a song or a poem? A song and a poem, maybe. Ooh, if you're good, you get both.
It's outrageous. It is outrageous, honestly. But this is what we've come to expect. The Republicans are saying we want to take away more rights, and Democrats are singing, reading poems. I can't help but laugh because that's the state of politics. It's almost like a parody movie. But no, this is real life. Now, the Democratic Party also tweeted that the basic right to privacy is on the ballot, and also the stakes of this midterm election are even higher now. Translation, we're not going to fight for you right now. If you want us to fight for you, well, maybe you increase our majority. Every single poll indicates that they're going to get wiped out. So a Democratic Party who cared would fight right now. Not wait, not fun.
Yes, that's it. That's the thing. You're about to get smoked. You are about to lose political power. And you, again, could do things. You could do things in the interim to be able to secure more power and get more people out to vote for you. Not saying, hey, the other side bad. We're not as bad as them. No one fucking cares about that. No one's going to get fucking time out of their hard lives, working 2 jobs, driving Uber and shit to want to go and volunteer and campaign for you because you're just like, other side bad. But I'm also not going to do shit for you. So yeah, of course, you could do a ton of things via executive order right now. And this is even before the election. You could fucking You could pardon a whole bunch of people, nonviolent drug offenders. You could forgive student loans. That'll definitely energize the base for sure, stuff like that. And you can do everything within your power right now while you still have it. And that's the key thing. While you still have it to fight. Like, not just poems and songs and coming out and being like, well, we're exploring options. I'm going to say that. We're exploring options. There are options, and we're looking to explore them. So, we're going to have to work ourselves through that at some point.
Raise off of this, but use what little power you have left to fight right now. Codify Roe right now.
Yeah.
And if Congress isn't going to accomplish anything, Joe Biden needs to start nominating new Supreme Court justices. There's nothing in the Constitution stopping him from doing this because Republicans packed the Supreme Court. So Biden can make the case to the American people that he's just unpacking the court and rebalancing the court to restore this rogue court back to the American people who don't like what this far-right extremist court who is illegitimate is doing. But they're not going to do that. They're just going to say, man, I hope you vote for us. And then maybe we'll begin to fight if you give us a bigger majority. There's no hope. I'm sorry, but there's no hope. I don't mean to be doomer, but this is who we have. They're the one opposition party to the fascists. Fascists know exactly what they want to do. They have their plan outlined. But Democrats, they're singing. Unbelievable. Now I want to get to some reactions here. Lindsey Boylan tweets, a court that does not recognize the full human rights of women is not a legitimate court. Couldn't agree more. Walker Bragman writes, with this decision that flagrantly flies in the face of public opinion, the United States Supreme Court has likely permanently tarnished its credibility as an apolitical legal body. Tiffany Jackson writes, forced birth in a country that doesn't have mandatory maternity leave or universal health care. Yeah, Jessica Corey offers some advice. Delete your period tracking apps today. That is really important advice because I would not trust these tech companies with your information about your period. This could be used against you if you live in a red state or pretty soon.
Look how sad Chico is. Look how sad you've made Chico, Supreme Court. Shame on you.
A blue state, assuming they're able to enact their full ban on abortion. And if you are a gay couple in the United States, if you're a queer person in general, get your birth certificate, get a passport, because we don't know how bad it's going to get, but don't be caught off guard. They're trying, they're broadcasting that they want to make being gay illegal. So if you are in a loving gay relationship in a red state currently, they soon could prosecute you. That's where we're at. So don't wait until it's too late. Get all of your documents ready. Be prepared to seek asylum in a different country because they could be coming for you. And that's where we're at as a country. That's where we're at. I have to tell you this because I want you to be prepared. We're not there yet, but they've broadcasted what they want to do, and you have to be ready to flee in the event it comes to that. So this is one of the darkest days in American history, and the most horrifying thought about this moment right now is that this is only the beginning. This is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get a lot worse in the next 5 to 10 years.
Get active, everybody.
Going forward. One other point, Libby, and that is that if Republicans seek a national ban on abortion through the Congress, they're going to face a public opinion that is strongly against them. They will be able to do things in the states where they have power, and they've already done that, and it's one of the reasons why we are where we are today. But in terms of a national ban, A, they are not likely to have the votes for that, and B, they're not likely to have public opinion. And so they're going to have to measure carefully what steps they want to take at a national level.
Dan Baltz, thank you so much. You're looking at images live outside the Supreme Court, and our colleague Jorge Ribas has been there all day, and he joins us now. Jorge, I know you've been in the thick of it for so many hours. You were there this morning when the decision was first announced. What was it like when word got out that Roe v. Wade was overturned?
Right, Libby, yeah. We got here around 9:30 and the decision started coming in at 10 a.m. And there was a smaller crowd, much smaller than you're seeing here right now. A small crowd of pro-choice supporters and a smaller crowd of anti-abortion supporters. And these are people that had been here all week. I was here Tuesday morning and Thursday morning when decisions were coming in as well. And it was a lot of the same people you were seeing there. So you had one crowd over here and another one over here. And that first decision came in at 10, and it wasn't the Dobbs decision. And then shortly after, 10, 15 minutes later, the Dobbs decision came. And immediately I was filming a group of pro-choice supporters, and right behind them were the anti-abortion supporters, and they threw their hands up in the air, cheering loudly. You saw the faces of the pro-choice supporters just fall, even though, and I talked to some people on both sides of this issue, they knew this decision was coming, but
Elie Mystal, I really wish all the people who tried to launder the reputations of the conservative justices when they were up for confirmation and gaslit us into thinking they respected precedent would at least have the guts and accountability to stand up today and say they were wrong. Like, you motherfuckers know who you are. Just show up, at least in the end, right? I was wrong. Conservatives are just radical and extreme, as they always promise to be. In the future, I will not have a fucking sap who yearns to share cocktails with power and peace, or something. Yeah, stop handing it to them. Stop this bipart. Like, who knew this would happen? Who, like, we just had no way of knowing. Yeah, they actually are doing all the things they say they want to do on a regular fucking basis.
sort of the Christian folks left, and the crowd of pro-choice supporters has grown exponentially, as you're seeing behind me. It's a much, much larger crowd than you saw at 10 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, the leopard eating faces party.
Jorge Ribas reporting for us live at the Supreme Court. Thank you so much, Jorge. I appreciate it. Caroline Kitchener joins me now from Houston. Caroline covers abortion here at the Washington Post. She spent the day at an abortion clinic. Okay, so Caroline, talk to us about what happened there today as this decision came down.
I'm here in Texas, where there is a pre-Roe ban that, basically says that the minute this decision comes down, they have to stop. So everybody in the clinic knew that if
bipartisan
this was
is
the
a
decision
myth.
we
Yeah,
got,
I
and if
mean,
we got it this
Republicans
morning,
don't care about
they were going
bipartisanship.
to have to immediately cease operations. And there were patients in the waiting room. There were 20 patients scheduled today.
Wow.
So at 10:12, I think it was, somebody pulls up SCOTUS blog and everybody looks at this decision. And there's just silence. And everybody is just stunned. And then, after a couple minutes, somebody says, okay, we have to figure out what we do. Somebody goes into the waiting room and one by one starts pulling out the patients to tell them that they're not going to be able to perform their abortions. And not only can they not perform the abortions here in Texas, but across wide swaths of America, they can't go there either.
What are the emotions like of the women that you've been talking to today, Caroline?
I mean, a lot of tears. I didn't, I only got to talk to a couple of patients because it's such an emotional moment and such a vulnerable moment. But one patient that I talked to, just through tears, told me that she couldn't believe it. Texas has already banned abortion after 6 weeks, and she was 5 weeks along, and she said, I feel like I did everything right. I beat the law. Like I came in here and I felt like I had beat the law that already existed. And then I came in only to find out that it was totally illegal. And she just kept crying. And, she was 25 years old, already had one child, and just couldn't see a way that, she could be a mom again. She couldn't afford it. And so, she's trying to figure out whether she's going to be able to get to another state.
Yeah, I know it was early moments as you were talking to her, but did she have a plan of action, a sense of what next steps could be for her?
Yeah, I mean, she had a consultation with somebody at the clinic that had told her about the states where it was still available. So she had been thinking about Illinois. She knew somebody there. And, she was saying that she had a very small amount of savings and she was going to use them to try to get on a plane and book a hotel, but that by getting this abortion, she was going to go back to living paycheck to paycheck. And she was just so frustrated about that. And so...
Yeah, because the system has just utterly and completely failed you at that point. Like, what... We live in a society, TM. We all come together. We have a whole bunch of things under the state, and we pay all our money, and we put them into taxes, and we want to fund all these programs. And at the same time, it's now making it illegal for doctors to be able to perform a procedure on you that you may need or desire or want, just against your own autonomy, your own choice. That is like, yeah, I can't even wrap my head around how fucking bleak that is. To have it happen in real time, to fucking get the decision on your phones, and then all of a sudden that day you were scheduled to have an abortion, and it's like we no longer can do this. It's no longer legal. This is now an illegal practice for us to perform this on you. So that's pretty much it. That's it. Not anything in the opposite direction, by the way, in terms of like, again, the same Republicans who want to legislate people's bodies, who want to force them to give birth, don't give a fuck the second the kid that comes out. Like, it's just like, oh, at that moment, yeah, there's not going to be anything to support you. We're not also going to support to giving you any kind of like financial ease in you having to go through this pregnancy. Like, the amount of cost associated with the pregnancy in the US astonishes me. Absolutely astonishes me. It wasn't until I had a really close friend give birth in Canada, and talking about the experience, and it was at that moment they both had that moment, like, you know, clarity of the public healthcare system up here, because they were both sitting there realizing the amount of things that were necessary to keep them safe, to be able to get them a safe C-section because the kid was in danger, all this, to the amount of like money spent in hospital care, bills, staying in the hospital bed, all that kind of stuff. Like, you have to pay for that out of pocket if you don't have insurance in the US. I like, we were looking at it state by state. In some states, it was like $10,000 US was the cost. And it was like $10,000. Who has that saved up right now? Who has that saved just waiting for a rainy day? And if you do, it's probably to put a down payment on a house or something, or probably something that you want to get in life. And now you just have to do it to have a kid against your will.
You know, what almost everybody says is, look, you know, I can't afford.
Well, in some
to
states it
have
was
another
18,000,
kid,
yeah.
and I don't feel like that's what's right for me in my life right now. You know, many of them that I talked to today, working full time.
It's unfathomable
and,
cruelty.
You know, talk to me a lot about the high cost
fucking
of daycare.
Fuck 2022 being like Back to the Future, the Blade Runner, all this shit. We were supposed to have flying cars, talking robots. We were supposed to do all kinds of crazy stuff by now. The most we got that was neat was DALL-E Mini. And then on top of that, it's like, hey, by the way, we're going to be going back to the fucking medieval ages. Yeah. Did you like the Renaissance? Are you a fan of it? Well, guess what? Would you like to be governed by the same rules that applied during that time if you are a woman? Oh, yes. Well, you get that.
And how that just doesn't seem feasible for them right now. A lot of frustration about why the government isn't doing more to help them through public programs, to help, you know, with things like childcare. It just, parenthood just didn't.
Oh, wow. Milquetoast fence-sitter Tim Pool. He's a lefty, by the way. It's done! And Friday morning, what the fuck? They must want the riots! Oh, shit! By the way, Friday morning is with purpose. Then you have the whole weekend to ideally take some time off from your work week. Enjoy yourself, you know, spend it with family, relaxing, maybe go to the beach, maybe catch up on some Netflix or something you want to do. But no, instead you're going to have to take your free time, the time in which you're not working, most likely for a wage that is under what you deserve, to go out and have to fight for your rights, to go out onto the street and have to protest, to go out and have to fight for things. Great. Holy shit. Gay marriage is next in line to be overturned. Let me just add another. Holy shit!
Caroline Kitchener reporting for us live from Texas, where she covered the final moments at an abortion clinic in Texas today as the decision came down and they had to stop their work. Thank you so much, Caroline. We'll talk to you again soon. Rhonda Colvin, let's go to you for legislation and what happens next on Capitol Hill. What will you be watching in terms of next steps by Democrats and by Republicans?
Well, some Democrats are saying they're not going to give up on the fight to get abortion access codified. That is something that they say they will continue trying to push, but the reality is with the filibuster in the Senate, that doesn't appear incredibly likely. But you never know, because again, today, the big news here, the other big news on the Hill is that both chambers passed significant gun.
Hassan's going to get clapped for his Tim Pool reply. If Hillary Clinton would have won in the 2016 Supreme Court, would have mandated forced abortions today. You should have been mandated forced abortion too. I don't think he'll get clapped. I think his account's too big. And it's not a death threat.
legislation, and that didn't look possible months ago. So you never know what could happen after public pressure is put on elected officials. So we'll see where things go. I know Democrats say they are going to turn this into an election battle, and I would suspect in both chambers you're going to see, we know of one hearing that will be happening next month, but there may be others that are related to abortion. So I'll be keeping an eye on all of those things and just what happens with this incredible and weighty issue here on the Hill. It's something that Dan Balls said just moments ago that.
Oh, and Tim Pool has just retweeted Glenn Greenwald, who's going after Carlos Maza. The gay wonk used his Twitter account to unveil his plan of action today in response to the court's ruling in Dobbs. Fascists literally do not care about how hard you vote. They are not trying to win elections. Violence is the only language they understand, and it's time we start speaking it. Good stuff. Good stuff, Glenn Greenwald. Targeting those levers of power you are. Targeting a YouTuber lefty who works by and for himself. Definitely going to take down the structures.
This has been really a long time coming, so you know you can't really turn things around very quickly, but there is going to be a lot of public pressure. I'm standing here, adjacent to the court. I'm hearing people, I'm hearing the honking horns, and we'll all have to wait and see for the next days and weeks to see how this plays out on the streets.
Rhonda Colvin reporting live from Capitol Hill. Thank you so much. James Hohmann, let's go to you for final thoughts before we leave this broadcast this evening.
Well, the world is watching what is happening in the United States. We've seen statements from a host of world leaders. Justin Trudeau called the decision horrific. Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France, expressed solidarity with American women, tweeting as if he was writing about some developing country rather than the United States. And it really is striking when you look at it, today's news, from the global perspective. The trend in recent years has been that many of the last countries in the world that banned abortion were relaxing those restrictions. Catholic countries like Ireland and Mexico have legalized abortion in recent years, and the United States is now moving in the opposite direction. And so it's valuable, I think, to close tonight with that global perspective.
All right, James Hohmann, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us on this historic day, a day when 50 years of legal precedent was thrown out, a day when the Supreme Court's conservative majority overturned Roe v. Wade and the right to an abortion. Please continue to watch and read the Washington Post for more information as we track this story and what happens both at the national and statewide levels. I'm Libby Casey. We will see you again soon.
Sometimes you have to see to believe and witness.
Sometimes you have to see to believe. Ireland legalized it, for fuck's sake. This is true.
A hearing. So that was decided by the next election, where obviously Donald Trump became president. And then when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died with just about a month to the election, McConnell switched his stance on that and was able to get Justice Amy Coney Barrett on the court. So that is what made this supermajority, the conservative supermajority. The other reason people are angry, and it's not just the people here, it's members of Congress, is under oath during their confirmation.
Because Republicans don't play by the rules, okay? Every single time you want to go, when they go low, we go high. Decorum is the most important thing. You get fucked. Look what happens. That entire ordeal where it was like, oh, yes, Mitch McConnell is maybe correct in saying that, it's not the will of the American people for us to appoint a Supreme Court justice 9 months out. 9 months out of the election. We still have 9 months before the election. But you know what? That one, yeah, maybe we should wait. We'll see what the American people vote for, and then that person can appoint the justice. Okay, we'll go with that one. Yeah, like they didn't do that when the roles were reversed. Donald Trump in power. It's like a month left to the election. Fuck it.
hearings, the 3 new justices
It's like when they go low, we go ineffective.
said that they believe that Roe v. Wade was settled law. Just to give you a sense of how incredibly huge this decision is, the case before them was, could you ban abortion after 15 weeks? They went ahead and just said Roe v. Wade was decided wrong, we're throwing it out. Supreme Court doesn't usually do that. It's very rare that they don't listen to the court's own precedents.
Well, Gabriel Elizondo is out with protesters in New York. What have you been seeing and hearing there?
The streets are filled tonight in New York City with protest, a protest of people outraged about this decision and wanting their voices heard.
So, hey, everyone, don't know if you know this. In Mexico, when abortion rights were up for debate, they marched to the presidential palace and attempted to burn it down. The Mexican government quickly decriminalized abortion nationwide soon after that. I did not know that. I didn't know that piece of Mexican history.
To support abortion rights. Let me tell you where I'm at now. I'm on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And just down this direction is Washington Square Park. Why I'm showing that to you is there are thousands of protesters there as well, abortion rights protesters there. And this group that we've been following from Union Square Park is going to meet them in the next few minutes or so. There are thousands more here at Fifth Avenue, mostly young people. They've all sat down in the middle of this intersection right now to protest and have their voices heard. It's a lot of young people. It's a lot of people from various different backgrounds as well, all united in one thing, united in wanting to maintain abortion rights and united, quite frankly, in outrage of this decision. And even though that this was somewhat expected because that the decision was leaked a few weeks ago, there was still a sense of, is this really going to happen? Will Roe v. Wade really be overturned? And now, of course, that reality has so abruptly sunk in here with people throughout the United States, but particularly here in New York City, a city and a state, really, that very much want to protect abortion rights. The mayor of New York City saying that he will maintain this city as a place for women to get a safe and legal abortion moving forward, a safe haven city and state, if you will. But bottom line, though, is you can see outrage of people here out on the streets as these protests will probably go late into the evening.
Thank you very much, Rob Reynolds. Excuse me, Gabriel Elizondo. Sorry about that in New York. We will speak to Rob Reynolds very shortly. But first, I want to bring you this clip. Governors of 3 U.S. West Coast states, Washington, Oregon, and California, have put out a joint video statement condemning the decision, and they're offering to help women who are affected.
Reproductive freedoms are under attack. Red states and Republican-stacked courts have rolled back the rights of Americans.
Today, with the Supreme Court ruling to overturn Roe versus Wade, more than half the states in the United States ban abortion outright or severely restrict access to abortion services.
That's why California, Oregon, and Washington are building the West Coast offense to protect patients' access to reproductive care. We're going to work with our legislators, with our providers, with our patient advocates.
We will continue to protect patients from any state who come to our states for abortion care.
So let's go live to Rob Reynolds in Los Angeles. I was just speaking to Gabe in New York, and he says that abortion rights supporters are planning protests. What has been the reaction there?
Well, you know, California, like New York, is a state which has robust protections for the right for a woman to choose an abortion. So it is not affected, but very quickly, within the next 30 days or so, maybe a dozen states or more will pass so-called trigger laws which will outlaw abortion. So today here in Los Angeles, despite the fact that this is not a state that will ban abortion, you have hundreds of people gathered in front of the in front of the federal courthouse here in downtown Los Angeles, venting their anger, their outrage, their disappointment, their fury.
Oh, I totally missed the fucking shut and chat. Imagine deciding to burn in hell just because you want dicks and butts and to kill babies. Yes, that's definitely what people are advocating for. It's just mass baby murder. That's the hill you people want to die on. Knowing that heaven and hell exist. How do you know that? How do you know? Can you show me heaven and hell? Are they in the room right now? Satan will torture you in hell. Hell yeah, baby. I'm counting on it, motherfucker. I'm counting on it. Okay, that's my retirement plan. Yeah, I'm ready.
At this decision by the Supreme Court, and people who are driving past are honking in support. We heard from the governor just a moment ago in that.
Imagine getting everything you want and still being mad. Yeah, I know. It's just like you just can't turn it off. Shouldn't you be soying out somewhere in some weird corner of the internet? You know, some foreign, I don't know, like 4chan or something like that. Isn't that where you should be celebrating with the rest of the Pepes who are just all like, yeah, we did it. Fuck women. Fuck trans people. Another victory for the incels. Like that should probably be a part of it.
Brief video statement. I want to quote from the Senate, California State Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, who is a woman who worked at a women's health center in the past before she entered politics. And she said that California will not leave people vulnerable to the tyranny of a loud minority. So California is expecting an influx of people from around the country, states like Oklahoma and Texas, possibly others, who are seeking abortions here. The problem is, while there is a robust network of about 100
getting everything you want and still being mad is a defining quality of privilege.
Women's health care clinics, there's going to be a flood of people. In fact, the study just released this month by the University of California predicted 16,000 people would be coming to California in the near term. 10,000 of those here.
There's going to be an entire abortion tourism industry
Angeles.
now.
So that's going to put a big strain on the whole system, and it may create delays for people who are seeking abortions, and it may create a lot of stress for those who provide abortions. So just more proof that the decision by the Supreme Court today stretches far beyond states like Mississippi or Texas and goes right to states where abortion is and is likely to remain legal.
And Rob, it's not just some state governments that are rejecting this decision, but also corporations.
That's right. Some of the biggest corporations in the country are taking action, are standing against this. And I can name a few of them: Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, Disney, JP Morgan Chase, one of the largest banks in the country, Levi Strauss, maker of blue jeans, Goldman Sachs, one of the big powerhouses on Wall Street. All of them are telling their employees, we will pay for your transportation.
I spend nonstop shitting on monstrous corporations and capitalism. So you will realize that this is a very fucked up time in history for me to be saying this, but good job. Good job.
And travel to a state where abortion is legal if you require reproductive services. So this is the continuation, I think, of a decades-long history that has become more upfront and more intense recently, of corporations standing up or getting
so they don't have to pay for maternity leave. So true. Abortions for everyone. Please don't get pregnant. We don't want to lose the workforce for 9 months or a year and a half.
Involved in politics. You know that Disney was involved in a scrape with the governor of Florida, but Disney nevertheless is saying if its employees need this service, then they are going to help to send them somewhere where they can get it.
Thank you very much. With the latest from Los Angeles, Rob Reynolds reporting to us there. Thank you, Rob. So I'm now joined by Liz Lentz. She is the author of the book Belaboured About, which is about rights and the autonomy of pregnant women. Now, this was an expected decision, but also rare and unprecedented. How did you feel when you heard of the news?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to really, even if you knew this was coming and there was the initial outrage and shock, the fact that it's actually happened still seems surreal.
So, like you said, I was expecting this to happen, but when I saw the news come across social media, I started to cry. I have a sister who, if she becomes pregnant, she will die. She had an abortion last year, and so that was my first thought, was just for her and her life and the life of all the women I know who've terminated pregnancies, who've had difficult pregnancies, and just the beautiful lives that they've lived and the lives that will be lost because of this decision.
Your background is interesting because you were kind of raised within the anti-abortion movement. You were raised to think that abortion is something that is deeply selfish. Why did your position change?
So, right, I grew up homeschooled in Texas. I'm one of 8 children, and we were brought to anti-abortion rallies. We were displayed at church, you know, as an example of a pro-life family. And without exception, as I and my siblings grew up, we all became pro-abortion. And the reason is because we've lived as Americans. America doesn't have universal health care. It's tied to your employer. And even if you have good health care, birth can cost thousands of dollars. Postpartum care in America is trash. We have no paid leave, no paid parental leave. It is a disaster. You know, we're the
Hate to pull this one back out, but Alabama, $5,230 if you have insurance, $9,000 if you don't. Alaska, $11,000 if you have insurance, $20,000 if you don't. Arizona, $8,000 with insurance, $14,000 without insurance. Arkansas, $5,000 without, $10,000. Oh, sorry, $5,000 with, $10,000 without. These are all rough. I'm just trying to breeze through it. California, $7,755 with, $14,000 without. For a C-section, $20,000 without coverage. Colorado, a vaginal birth, $7,000. Delivery method will set you back $13,000 if you don't have insurance. Connecticut, $8,000, $15,000 without. C-section, $20,000. If you're in Canada watching, you have to add a lot more to these amounts. Florida, $7,000 with insurance, $14,000 without. Georgia, $7,000 with, $13,000 without. Hawaii, $6,000 with insurance, $10,000 without. I mean, Hawaii's one of the cheapest, but that's still $6,000. Idaho's $6,000, $11,000 without. Like, it just goes on and more expensive in certain places. If you need a, like, you know, heaven forbid if you need a C-section, it's going to be $20,000 plus in some places. New York, $8,000 with insurance, $16,000 without, $22,000 for a C-section without insurance in average cost. Oklahoma, $6,000 without, $11,000 with. Rhode Island, South Dakota, like, I mean, what? Have sex, go bankrupt. Have sex, be riddled with debt for the rest of your life. That's pretty much the fucking, the message being sent here. Because you can't get an abortion.
Developed nation with the highest rate of maternal
richest country in the world, by the
mortality.
way.
It's worse if you're indigenous. It's worse if you're black. And so basically, we're a wealthy nation. We have rampant hunger, you know, among children. We're ending a school lunch program, so now children won't be able to afford lunch at school. And so we've lived this life. You know, I have sisters who are queer. I have sisters who have been abused. I have sisters who are single mothers. I'm a single mother. And we've all lived this life as Americans, and we've all come out the other side understanding that we deserve the basic right to control our bodily autonomy.
You had an experience with sexual assault. What are the implications for women, obviously in many places, that might have unwanted pregnancies as a result of sexual assault, rape, or incest?
that was my assault in college was a galvanizing moment for me. I had been on a journey where I'd gone to college and heard my friends' abortion stories and had been really rethinking my position. Well, maybe that's something they would do, but I would never. And I was assaulted, and I remember waking up that next day and realizing I would do anything to protect the life and freedom that I had fought so hard to get for myself. Getting to college was really hard for me. I had no money, and just getting there and graduating was a huge undertaking. And that was that moment when I realized, oh, my life is worth something, and I need to fight to preserve it. And I do, and for so many states in America, a lot of them will not have exceptions for rape or incest. And that's because these lawmakers believe that women should be forced to give birth no matter what. So while some states, it's a hodgepodge, while some states might have exceptions here or there, what you're going to be seeing is a criminalizing of women, and forced birth will be a reality here in America.
Liz Lenz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Still ahead for you on the program. The UN concludes that Israeli forces, not Palestinian fighters, killed Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh.
Yep.
And another protester is killed and dozens injured as anti-government protests in Ecuador move into their 12th day.
To get out of their states to get access to care. We know that 26 states are poised to ban access to abortion or severely restrict access. We know that 36 million women and non-binary and trans folk will be affected by this decision. We know that people who would be most impacted are likely to be low-income, rural, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities who may lack the resources to be able to get out of state. So it means that many people will be forced into pregnancy, and that will have a devastating consequence for the families they're currently caring for, much less themselves and their communities.
And what does it mean for Planned Parenthood and for other organizations like yours that support abortion rights? What do you do now?
Oh, look, I have lost hope in the court, but I have a lot of hope in the people. Now is the time for us to fight back. And that is exactly what we are planning to do. We are mobilizing people across the country to ensure that they know what is at stake, to ensure that every lawmaker, every corporation, every university understands the impact that this will have on their constituents, on their workforce, on their communities, on their students, and to ensure that no one gets to stay neutral in this moment. No one gets to say, well, that's a complicated, controversial issue I don't want to touch.
Tweet from Precious Melody. Pro-life, but no paid maternity leave. Pro-life, but no affordable, accessible health care. Pro-life, but no access to mental resources for the mother. Pro-life, but no changes to the foster system. Pro-life, but no guaranteed access to good education. Pro-life, but no increase in wages.
When it starts to impact your community, you will have to take a stand, and we're going to force everyone who is in every community to have that conversation around
S. Mason H.
The anti-abortion movement, many of its leaders are now saying they are not stopping with this. They are going to look now to try to ban abortion nationwide. How will you respond to that?
They've been forecasting this for so long. We can see how incredibly emboldened that they are, that they're showing their entire playbook. Not only do they want to push for
All right, well, you've been waiting for it. I think we found the worst tweet of the day, everybody, from Representative Andy Levin. In a moment of wildly conflicting emotions, of intense anger over horrifying Supreme Court decisions with more to come, mixed with gratitude that I was just able to help pass the first meaningful gun reform in 3 decades, I turn inward, at least for a moment. I hope for your sake, sir, that this was a misguided intern and not you doing this yourself. I hope.
A nationwide 6-week ban. Now is the time to be.
Hey, half the country and people in the LGBTQ plus have just had their bodily autonomy stripped from them, but I did a thing. I did something.
Engaged in the fight. Now is the time to make sure that future generations continue to maintain and hold rights. We have to make sure that every movement understands that.
The oval poppus? What's the oval poppus? Oh my paw. Welcome to Gleed. Yeah, now's not the time to make the cute cat memes.
We have to make it relevant for every single generation.
Yeah, he is pretty progressive. That doesn't change the fact that that was a terrible fucking tweet.
And we want young women to grow up in a world where they are able to pursue their own freedom, their own imagination. And we are going to continue to fight with them and for them until they take the baton so they can fight along with us.
Alexis McGill-Johnson, the president of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And for an even closer look at how this decision impacts Americans and how organizations are responding on the ground, we turn to Amna Nawaz.
That's right, Judy. We'll get two perspectives. I'm joined first by Michael Gonadakis. He's president of the group Ohio Right to Life. He's been with the organization for more than 14 years. Michael, welcome to the NewsHour. Thank you for making the time. There have been people working towards this decision for 50 years. You have been working towards it for 14. Just help me understand, what is this moment like for you?
It's historic. Never in my lifetime did I believe it would come to this, and here we are today. And we have a monumental task ahead of us. Our work is not done; it's just begun. We need to ensure that we have the greatest social service safety net here in the state of Ohio to help all women, especially women who find themselves in an unintended pregnancy.
ACU has, the ACLU has put out a statement about protesting, and so you can know your protest rights. You don't need a permit to protest in response to breaking news, and you don't need a permit to march in the streets or along sidewalks as long as you're not obstructing traffic or access to buildings. When you lawfully present in any public space, you have the right to photograph anything in plain view, including federal buildings and the police. If you believe your rights are being violated, when you can, write down everything you remember, get contact information for witnesses, and take photographs of any injuries. If you get stopped by the police, ask them if you're free to go. If they say yes, calmly walk away. If you get arrested, you have a right to ask why. Otherwise, say you wish to remain silent and ask for a lawyer immediately. Don't sign, say, or agree to anything without a lawyer present.
Well, let me ask you about that work ahead and your resources there, because women in Ohio, like a lot of women around the country, lived through a pandemic. They were disproportionately affected when it comes to workforce participation. I saw in Ohio, rental prices have been soaring like they've been everywhere.
Andrew Yang. It's impossible not to conclude that the Supreme Court has become political. It's sad. Yeah, gold star, Andrew Yang. You did the math.
Everywhere else, we're living with record inflation. You're a nonprofit, how can you support these women? Do you have the funding and resources you need?
Well, we don't as an organization to help every single woman in Ohio, of course, but we do have our tax dollars through the legislature and our governor, who's pro-life as well, Mike DeWine. And what we've done from budget upon budget is find extra dollars or take dollars that we currently have and send them to help with WIC, help with SNAP, help with different programs that help women, whether it be for prenatal care or their own health care. We supported Medicaid expansion in Ohio and still do today. We think every woman should have access to a doctor no matter what. And we believe if we continue these common sense approaches at our city, county, and state level, the resources are there to ensure every woman who finds themselves in unintended pregnancy will have everything they need to have a healthy baby and raise their child or place their child for adoption.
You're confident those resources are already there, or they will be there?
They are already there. We have a $7 billion rainy day fund too, and our coffers are full, and we are spending the money now. Our governor continues to provide extra money for women, for diapers, formulas, for parenting classes, and the like, and he's doing a great job.
We should mention, too, in Ohio, the governor back in 2019 signed a so-called heartbeat bill, right, which effectively ban abortions at around 6 weeks or so. It's been held up in a court. It's likely to go into place. But even with that, if a woman in Ohio becomes pregnant, she can still travel out of state. She could still order in medication abortion. How does your group approach that?
Yeah, we're at a new frontier here. We're dealing with issues that we're seeing for the first time here. Of course, there is no law, nor would there be a law that would restrict someone's ability to cross state lines for any reason whatsoever. I'll tell you on the heartbeat bill, breaking news, the federal judge just lifted the injunction. So 10 minutes ago now, the law in Ohio is the heartbeat standard as of 10 minutes ago. And as it relates to mail order prescriptions, we can't regulate the internet at this time, of course, not a state or the federal government. So
yeah, I agree with you, chat. Left out the word yet.
I will do everything in my power to fight that deeply un-American attack.
In our other top stories today, a powerful aftershock has hit Afghanistan, killing at least 5.
Oh man, that is such a tragic story. It just keeps getting worse too.
I'm going to leave the wacky drops for a week where rights were not stripped away from millions and millions of people. But I'm John Ederle, and we're back with the Power Panel. I am joined by contributor Rebel HQ, Kyla Frank. Welcome to the show.
Great to be back. Thanks, John.
Great to have you here. And Farron Cousins, host of The Ring of Fire. Glad to have you here as well.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, John.
Glad to have you here.
They don't have topless news in China.
I
think topless news
what it would be like
South
to have
American
people
country.
like you on a show like this to just discuss good
Husky
news.
Ops, thanks for gifting
Never
us up.
happened. Maybe someday. But instead, we're going to transition to the stories that we do have. And why don't we actually get into that right now? If you're wondering right now, what comes after the destruction of Roe v. Wade? Well, insert a right. Because according to Clarence Thomas and conservatives like him, there's a whole lot of other things that they would love to take away. Rights that many Americans have had for years, possibly decades. He wrote, in fact, in the decision released today, I join the opinion of the court because it correctly holds that there is no constitutional right to abortion. Respondents invoke one source for that right. The 14th Amendment's guarantee that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the due process clause that he talks about. Well, that's just his jumping off point. Well, where does he go from there? He says, the court well explains why, under our substantive due process precedents, the purported right to abortion is not a form of liberty protected by the due process clause. Such a right is neither deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, nor implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. And if that can go out the door with this new view of how liberty is supposed to work, what else could? Well, in future cases, he says, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. Because our substantive due process decision is demonstrably erroneous, we have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents. So he's listing a bunch of those things. Maybe you're aware of those court cases and the rights that they concerned. Maybe you aren't, but just in case, it's small things like whether you have a right to purchase and use contraception, like at all, in any cases, all birth control, condoms, IUDs, all sorts of things. Can you actually get those, or should those be barred by law? Should you be locked up if you tried to buy or use those? How about
this is all so extreme. Holy fuck.
Sodomy laws. Same-sex sexual activity was illegal in many states up until, I don't know, like after Seinfeld concluded. Very recent history. They'd like to go right back to that. What about the ability of gay couples to marry? Significant things like that. No, they'd like to literally break apart millions.
Glad midsummer / happy midsummer. To break the doom, let's dance around a stick that's meant to be and sing about small frogs while drinking / eating.
The robot wouldn't say penis. Shame on you, robot. You should say penis all the time. It's glorious. Dicks are great. Non-binary superpowers. Thanks for gifting Mons Faba a tier 1 subscription. Appreciate it. Is that true? Is that thing that they dance around in the Midsummer Festival? Is that like is it a fertility thing? Is it supposed to be a penis?
And millions of marriages, and they're just getting started. This is what Clarence Thomas had off the top of his head while opining about a separate case. Imagine once the Heritage Foundation and all sorts of Republican senators and pundits really get revved up for the next
It's always
battles.
a penis, yeah, when in doubt.
What is this gonna look like, Kyla? What do you think?
First of all, I just want to highlight the conservative contradiction to this, recent court hearing and all the things that are going to be taken away from us in the future.
It's Swedish. Okay.
How is this promoting freedom? How, please, when you strip away?
Oh, not to mention, can we add one thing, and I'll take away that bad screenshot because this is not a bad person. How the fuck are they talking about the sanctity of life when those motherfuckers weren't willing to do shit once COVID struck. Like over 1 million Americans have died from COVID. And it was like, okay, the broad consensus of the scientific community is very clear on this. We can do a small amount of things. It's not asking a lot of you, any of you, such as wear a mask, social distance, and wash your hands. That third thing you should have been knowing how to do and already doing. Just part of being a clean human being. And yeah, wash your hands, please. And they were like, no, this is an infringement on freedoms. I don't care that this is disproportionately going to result in more people getting this disease, disproportionately going to result in more old people, people with disabilities, people of color, frontline workers, all dying from this disease. I don't care about any of that. The mask, that infringes on my rights. I don't care about life, ultimately, as you can probably tell, of certain groups. I just care about ghost babies, theoretical children. I just care about that. I care about fetuses, the sanctity of life. That's all I care about, you know? That's why we're going to move the bar even further now, and it's not going to be life begins at conception. It's life begins at fertilization. Hey, let's move it a couple steps further. Life begins when you just give someone an interesting look and you give them the eye. All of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, okay, well, the sanctity of life has begun legally at this point. We now have to protect it.
People, like, it can only get worse. And I want everyone to be paying attention to this moment right now. And I also want everyone to understand that young people, like the media always likes to call us apathetic, that we don't pay attention. We are extremely involved in this right now. Y'all know that I work for Unpack, a youth organization. I talked to several young people today who are tapped into this moment. We are not willing and we are not ready to let our future slip through our fingers. And so you can bet we're going to be fighting like hell in order to make sure that our rights are protected. And it's just, again, it's a contradiction to say that, sit here and take all these rights away and promote freedom. I'm like really sick of it. And also, Thomas, you want to talk about taking people's freedoms away? Let's talk about people who are actually breaking the law, like your wife.
That's a good point. There's definitely some glass houses there. Farron, I'm curious about what you think about this, but also, in the decision, people like Alito and Kavanaugh are like, well, I mean, we're not Thomas. We're not coming for those things. Those are settled law. Why would you worry about us coming for those? Does that reassure you?
Oh, absolutely not. It's the meme, like, oh, I never thought the leopards would eat my face, said the person who voted for the leopards eating people's faces party. Look, so here's what we got to do, because we obviously know now, Clarence Thomas made it very clear they're coming for the rest of our rights. And as soon as he can think of more, he's gonna add those to the list as well. All right, fight fire with fire. Right here, right now, this is what we have to do. One, we gotta kill the filibuster so we can expand the Supreme Court. Easier said than done. But if legal precedent no longer matters at the US Supreme Court, then fantastic. Let's get busy working on ways to overturn Citizens United, McCutcheon, Heller, all of these other horrendous decisions. Let's do what they're doing. And I hope the Democrats understand that in order to do that, you're gonna have to borrow a couple of pages from the Republican Party's playbook. Why was this even at the Supreme Court to begin with? Because Republicans at the state level passed this law that they knew would get challenged in court so that they could send it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Democrats need to do that. You've got to get a blue state somewhere to say, okay, fine. Corporate money is officially banned in this state from our politics. Then the second one of those little right-wingers sues to overturn that, that's when the ball goes in motion. But it doesn't mean anything if you send it to this court. It has to go to a court that has 30 frickin' judges on it. I don't even care how many. But that's what we have to do. And we have to fight fire. We have to play their game by their rules, or we're gonna continue to lose.
Yeah, well, look, Kyla, we were talking in the first segment about, there's a lot of blame to go around for how this happened. I mean, this is a legal effort that's been going on for literally decades.
Susan Sarandon, Bernie Sanders, and all the progressives. Y'all prevented Hillary from winning. Shame on all of you.
It's ramped up recently, but I know that Twitter is not the real world. I'll acknowledge that. But I've seen on Twitter any number of people who, despite the inability and unwillingness of the Democrats who've been in power for a little bit of time and they control, both chambers of Congress and the White House, they didn't do anything to stop this from happening. They didn't do it before the leak. They didn't do it after the leak. Those people, their faith in the centrist Democrats don't seem to have been shaken at all.
You know why that is? It's because they're not willing to accept responsibility for their own actions. Not willing to, respond to why exactly what led to Hillary Clinton losing. Was it Bernie Sanders exclusively? Was it Susan Sarandon exclusively? Was it alienating large parts of the electorate, large parts of voting bases, especially in rural America, consistently not meeting the material needs of people when you are in power, when you do have super majorities, stuff of that nature? Or was it Bernie? Was it Bernie? Was it Susan Sarandon? Was it the progressives?
Oh, who is to blame for this? And you know who's to blame for this? Bernie voters from 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's who's to blame for this. And so it makes me, like, I agree with everything Farron said about how we should fix this. And I know that we can do it. We don't necessarily need those people. But it is crazy that, like, they could still think that, no, people like Biden, Pelosi, Sinema, those are the ones we need. We have to have more faith in them. We have to love them harder. Joe Manchin, that's how we'll get these rights back that have been stripped away. What do you think?
It's absolutely false. And honestly, I just want people to stop putting their faith in these centrist Democrats. They've had numerous times to get this issue correct. First of all, they need to get on their bully pulpit and make sure.
Oh yeah, The Onion has been absolute fire today. Like they win the journalism award. Give them all the praise. Good job, The Onion. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earthhuman, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.